I died in this house once. The second time, I came back with something they couldn't understand.
He's no son of mine.
And the family that threw me away is about to find out what that cost.
The cane came down. I caught it. My mother stared at her own hand, then at mine, then at the rattan cane, the thick one she kept by the door, now sitting in my grip instead of hers. She'd swung it at me 100 times. I'd always knelt, always taken it, always said I was sorry for things I never did. Not this time. Here's what she didn't know. I had already lived this exact moment once before. Same room, same cane, same family standing around me like I was a problem they hadn't decided how to solve. 3 years of that life, beatings, false accusations, a storage room for a bedroom, and a broken phone, while my adopted brother had everything. And it ended with me in a hospital bed that nobody sat beside. The family didn't hold a funeral. They buried me somewhere unmarked and went back to celebrating the boy they actually wanted. After I died, I became a ghost. I drifted for years, watched everything, watched my adopted brother Lu Jin poison my mother slowly, manipulate my father into a trap that killed him, ruin my sisters one by one, all so he could climb to 9th rank martial saint on the wreckage of the people who'd adopted him, the golden child, the chosen one, the boy they picked over their own blood. And then I woke up, back in my 17-year-old body, back in this room, the cane already swinging. A translucent panel floated into my vision. Numbers, attributes, a balance reading 0, wisdom 5, strength 3, agility 4, physique 3, demon essence 0. One line below it, slaying Yao beasts yields demon essence. I'd read enough web novels to recognize a golden finger when I saw one. My breathing steadied. This time, I had a plan, not again. There are surveillance cameras all over this house, I said. The room went still. I'd never talked back, not once in 3 years. Every accusation, every beating, I'd taken it in silence. They'd built the whole system on that silence. Every false accusation counted on it. Check the cameras, see who touched the watch. Lu Jin's face changed for exactly 1 second. Then the tears came, flawless, right on schedule. He clutched Lin Shuya's arm and wept about being called cruel, about maybe just leaving if that's how I felt. That performance had worked 100 times before. He'd refined it to an art form. Lin Shuya slapped me. The floor came up fast. Half my face went numb. She was already reaching for the rattan cane, thick, heavy, kept by the door for exactly this. In my past life, I'd knelt at this moment, thanked her for the correction, let her believe she was teaching me something. She raised the cane. My hand came up. I caught it. She stumbled backward, stunned. The cane was mine now. Someone who doesn't deserve to be a mother, I said. Why would you get to hit me? Lu Gentian appeared in the doorway without a sound. That was his way. A 7th rank grandmaster doesn't announce himself. The air in the room just changed. He looked at me with that flat, assessing gaze, the one he used for investments and livestock. He took inventory quietly. Frail body, no martial arts talent, average grades. Then he told me if I wanted to leave, I should leave and never come back. I held his gaze for the full length of that sentence. As long as I leave here, I said, I can live 10,000 times better than this. Nobody stopped me. I packed in 5 minutes, 2 worn school uniforms, my entire wardrobe, 8,000 dragon coins saved from years of odd jobs around the house, an alloy knife. That was 3 years in the Lu mansion reduced to 1 bag. I left through the side door and did not look back once. If you're enjoying the story so far, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? I took a public bus to Jixiang Village, the slums on the edge of Beijing City. Muddy roads, low buildings crammed together under a gray sky. The air had a particular smell, like something had been quietly rotting for years, and everyone had agreed to stop mentioning it. People moved through the streets, wearing that specific blank expression of those who've made their peace with things not improving. The bald landlord rented me a 40 square meter room for 800 dragon coins a month. His only advice, don't talk to people, don't go out at night, lock everything. He said it with the tone of a man who'd given that speech 100 times and watched half those people ignore it. The room was larger than my bedroom at the Lu mansion. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the panel. Qi and blood, 60 cards. The martial arts examination minimum was 150. Registration was in 2 days. A gaunt man with a green complexion watched me from the hallway. Long-term drug addict from the look of him. I met his eyes once and walked past without a word. I had work to do. The market poultry section smelled like every living thing inside it had given up. Steel claw chickens, lowest grade Yao beasts, twice the size of a normal rooster, claws that could do real damage. The big bearded boss at the first stall watched me circle his cages like he was waiting for a punchline. I offered him 30 yuan a bird to let me kill them myself. He laughed. Then he did the math. Then he showed me the technique. Foot on the claws, hand on the beak, blade across the throat, and went back to minding his own business. The first one, 0.1 demon essence. By the 10th, the panel showed a full point. Small plus signs appeared next to every attribute I allocated to physique, and a warmth moved through me from my chest outward, steady and deep, like stepping into a hot bath after being cold for a very long time. My muscles firmed, my breathing changed. The frame that had absorbed 3 years of beatings began, quietly, to become something different. I killed all 44, found a second shop, and killed 62 more. By evening, I had 3.4 demon essence accumulated and had spent every coin of my Yao Beast budget, rent and food only from here. This was the path now. Get strong, pass the exam, build everything from nothing. That night, back in my room, I sat at the small desk and opened a cheap notebook I'd picked up at the market. I wrote the date at the top, then the first line of something I'd keep writing for a long time. Today, I left. Everything after this is mine. The alley was dark. The tall addict from the hallway and a short man with a knife, closing from opposite ends. They had the relaxed confidence of people who've done this before. Lend your big brother some money, the addict said pleasantly. I haven't eaten all day. He added, as a courtesy, that the police don't investigate deaths in Jixiang village. I set my steamed bun down on a clean stretch of wall. The police aren't doing anything? I said. That's great. I poured all remaining demon essence into physique at once. My bones made sounds I won't describe. Pain hit like every muscle tearing and rebuilding in seconds. The uniform that had been loose on me that morning was suddenly not loose at all. The short man swung first. I was faster. A kick to the chest. The utility pole behind him handled the rest. The addict pulled a dagger. His speed wasn't the problem I'd anticipated. I had him disarmed and kneeling in 2 moves. He said something about the Black Tiger Gang. He said it like the name was supposed to end the conversation. I thought about it. If they went back, the gang came for me. If they didn't, the gang noticed 2 missing members and came looking. Neither outcome was clean, but only one of them put armed men outside my door next week. They didn't survive. That was a calculation, not anger. I picked up my steamed bun and walked home. The night was quiet. My hands were steady. I noticed that the killing had felt no different than the chickens, and I filed that observation away without examining it further. Survival first, everything else later. Across the city, Lu Jin came home from work and looked around the empty living room. Where's Lu Sheng? She asked. The room went quiet in the way that contains the whole answer inside it. Next morning, I went to a pharmacy near the main road. Qi and blood, 140, 10 points short. I spent the rest of the day at the market, burning the last of my Yao Beast funds. By evening, I was over 150 and completely broke. Lu Jin had gone to my school, introduced herself as my sister. The class teacher, Zhang Chunhua, told her flatly that Lu Sheng's records listed him as an orphan, no family contact. No one had attended a single parent-teacher conference in 3 years. I learned that later. When I did, I didn't feel surprised. I'd spent 3 years being invisible in that house. An orphan on a school record was just the official version of what I'd always known. Registration day. I took the hour-long bus to Nomer, Warren High School, wearing my oversized school uniform over a body that no longer matched it. Physique 8. The loose fabric hid most of it. When I moved, it didn't quite hide enough. The Lu family arrived in 2 black cars. Lu Jin spotted me immediately, rushed over, reached for my arm. I've been worried sick, she said. In my past life, when the doctor announced I was gone, Lu Jin had checked her watch. She'd told them to contact her when the funeral was arranged. She'd left the hospital without looking back. I stepped sideways. Her hand caught air. None of your business, I said. Stop bothering me. Now I have nothing to do with any of you. She stumbled. Behind me, Lin Shuya was already cursing. Lu Qianru said something loud and ugly. Lu Zhentian said nothing, but I felt his gaze on my back, slow and careful, the way a man watches something he hasn't finished categorizing. I joined the registration line. There were 8 students in that line. Then there were 9. Zhang Chunhua counted twice. Both times he landed on me. The class had opinions. They remembered my score from 6 months ago, 60 calories, lowest in school. Several of them made threats. Zhang Chunhua, who hadn't managed to care much about my education for 3 years, now tried to physically drag me out of line and couldn't move me. He tried again, still nothing. I proposed a bet. Fail, I drop out. Pass. Everyone who mocked me apologizes publicly. The class laughed and pressured Zhang Chunhua into accepting. They were absolutely certain they were about to watch me fail in front of everyone. He signed my name onto the form. In the Lu family group watching from across the field, Lu Jin smiled thinly and said maybe I'd had some kind of adventure. He was already thinking about what came next. State-issued testing machines, government-operated, broadcast results campus-wide, and according to everyone who knew about these things, never in the entire history of the Dragon Kingdom successfully cheated. Lu Jin and Su Liliuo walked past the queue without waiting. Genius privilege. 233 for Lu Jin, 229 for Su Liliuo. As he passed me, Lu Jin had casually mentioned my old score to her. Just remembered it, he said, wasn't making any accusations. That was how he always planted things. I had thought carefully about my own number. The truth was, I probably had 80 or 90 more cards than I was going to show. A 17-year-old jumping from 60 to 300 would start a different kind of investigation than I was ready for. 163 was above the threshold, low enough to be plausible, high enough to qualify. The machine took 2 minutes. Lu Sheng, test result, 163.17 calories, qualified. The room erupted. Zhang Chunhua stood motionless with his mouth open. The bet still stands, right? I asked him. From across the room, Su Liliuo, young man, you can't leave yet. Director Wang, grade head, bald, summoned by the granddaughter of the school principal, exercising her particular sense of justice. The charge, 100-calorie improvement in 6 months, was impossible without banned substances. The implication, drugs. The threatened consequence, imprisonment. Lu Jin stood nearby, looking appropriately concerned. I looked at him directly, asked in front of everyone present whether he was the one who'd raised the issue. I just happened to remember your old score, he said, mentioned it casually. He who makes the claim must provide evidence, I said. I have nothing to confess. Director Lu came out of the glass partition. He asked one question, calmly. Was someone in this room suggesting that state examination equipment had been compromised? The room understood immediately what that question meant. Everyone except Director Wang and Su Liliuo, who understood about 2 seconds too late. What followed wasn't a conversation. Director Lu's logic was simple and airtight. No one had ever beaten the state machines, and suggesting they could be beaten called into question the integrity of every single examination across the entire Dragon Kingdom. He said this while looking at Director Wang. Director Wang's legs gave out. He sat down on the floor. Su Liliuo tried to argue. Director Liu pointed out what he thought of students who abused family connections to disrupt official proceedings. She stopped arguing. Lu Jin had already read the outcome. He moved quietly toward the door. Su Liliuo turned to find him, found the empty space where he'd been standing. I watched her face when it landed. The moment she understood she'd been a tool from the beginning. Every conversation, every exchange she'd thought was closeness. All of it, Lu Jin setting up his next move. A brainless pawn, I said quietly, before she ran out. Zhang Chunhua walked me to registration. In front of the whole class, he apologized. The same students who'd been celebrating my arrest 3 minutes earlier stood in various degrees of shame and silence. I stood at the front of the room, fully registered, face unreadable. There was nothing left worth putting on my face. In the Lu family car, the premature celebration had gone very quiet. Lin Shuya looked out the window. Lu Qianru said nothing for once. Lu Jin's expression was dark in the specific way I knew, not defeat. Revision. He was already building the next frame. The exam was 10 days away. I had no money, no contacts, no support of any kind. I had a golden finger that worked, a body that was no longer the weakest thing in any room I entered, and 3 years of knowing exactly how this family operated. That was enough, more than enough. The class apologized. One by one, they came to the front and bowed. Zhang Chunhua bowed first, genuinely, which surprised me. Then Wang Yue with his buzz cut and his miserable expression. Then a dozen others who'd been the loudest. I stood at the front of the room and watched each of them lower their heads, and I felt nothing in particular. Maybe there was a time, in another life, when that would have meant something. Now it was just people doing what consequences forced them to do. Apologies cost nothing. They meant nothing. Zhang Chunhua offered me a spot in the intensive prep course for the next 10 days. 10 days of group training with students who'd been cultivating since childhood, while I had a stat panel and unlimited room to grow. No need, I said. I have my own plans. I walked out of school with my hands in my pockets. The black sedan was waiting at the curb. 10 million yuan minimum. Lu Jin used it as his daily school run. Lu Gentian sat in the back. He rolled down the window when he saw me. "Get in," he said. "Come home. I'll forgive everything from that day." I looked at the car. I looked at him. "Someone like me," I said, "is not worthy to ride in the young master's car." He stared at me. "Save your charity for your precious one," I said, and walked away. Behind me, I heard Lu Jin's voice from inside the car, asking his father, so thoughtfully, what sort of secret encounter Lu Sheng might have had, suggesting that a real genius would benefit far more from such an opportunity. Watching Lu Gentian's eyes sharpen, I didn't turn around. I already knew where this led. On the walk back through Jixiang village, 4 gang members with tattoo-covered arms stopped me at the alley entrance. Had I heard anything strange 2 nights ago? One of them had his arm hooked over my shoulders like we were old friends. I hunched my back slightly, let my voice go small, said I'd been doing homework and didn't hear a thing. The second one waved me off, just a student, useless, and they let me go. I walked the rest of the way home with my head down, playing a frightened kid. I was getting good at that. I had 5 demon essence points saved. In my room, I allocated them with more care than last time, 1 at a time, to constitution and strength, pausing between each to let the changes settle. By the 5th point, I couldn't fit into my school uniform anymore. I stood in front of the cracked mirror. The person looking back was nearly 1.8 meters tall, shoulders broad enough to make the fabric pull tight across the chest, arms that looked carved from something solid. It was the same face, mostly, but the face was the only thing left that was recognizable. I went out and bought 2 t-shirts, sweatpants, and sneakers, under 400 yuan total. I walked out of the changing room, and the shop clerk, who had ignored me coming in, was suddenly very interested in whether I needed help finding anything. I did not. I walked to the city gate, scanned my iris for the first time in my life, and stepped outside the walls of Beijing City. The wilderness was different from anything I'd seen from inside. Open land for kilometers, then dense primeval forest beyond that. I found the sharp-toothed rabbits at the forest edge, big as hunting dogs, eyes the color of fresh cuts, muscles that moved under the fur like coiled rope. I worked the tree line for the rest of the afternoon, killing 14. A figure in a baseball cap hung at the tree line, watching me from 200 meters out. I filed that away. The next morning, I woke up with 4 claw wounds on my arms, red, swollen, itching badly. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the panel. Constitution 10, Demon Essence 1.4 remaining. It was a theory. I allocated 1 point to Constitution. The wounds changed in under 60 seconds. The redness faded. The edges drew together. By the time the itching stopped, the scratches had already sealed. I picked at the edges. The scab came off clean, leaving a faint pink line that was gone an hour later. I sat with that for a while. Demon Essence for healing. The system wasn't just a strength multiplier. It was infinite extra lives, as long as I had the currency to spend. I hunted more efficiently after that, adding agility as I went, trimming excess muscle, sharpening my reaction speed until the rabbits looked like they were moving in slow water. 3 demon essence that day. I reinvested every point. Ah Fu filed his daily report at the Lu mansion. Young Master Sheng hunts rabbits in the forest, doesn't take the bodies. Bizarre behavior, no useful information recovered. In the living room, Lin Shuya didn't look up from her phone. Lu Qianru laughed about trash living with garbage. Lu Jiaxin shook her head at how reckless MC was, hunting monsters before the exam. Footsteps on the stairs. Lu Qinghan came down and heard the last of it. Her face went still in a way that was different from her usual composure. The next day, she confronted the family. She asked about the allowance. 500 yuan for MC, 100,000 for Lu Jin. Lin Shuya explained that it was for MC's own good. Too much money would lead him astray. Qinghan asked if anyone had ever bought him clothes. Lu Qianru said, why would she? Lu Jiaxin pointed out that Xiao Jin's clothes were all bought by their mother. Lin Shuya asked Wang Ma if she remembered buying MC clothes. Wang Ma was the household maid. She'd been there the whole time. Young Master Sheng only has 2 sets of school uniforms, she said. 1 for winter, 1 for summer. His shoes wore through several times. I sewed them for him. Lu Gentian gave Lin Shuya a cold look. The room went quiet. Qinghan asked to see MC's room. Wang Ma led her to it. The old storage room, 5 square meters, a hard wooden bed, a thin quilt, no mattress, a chair, a desk. This was supposed to be a bedroom. It had been a place to store cleaning supplies before MC came home. Ching-han sat on the bed. The wood creaked. She pressed her hand against the surface, like sitting on a floor. She opened the desk drawer. Inside, a diary with a rough cardboard cover. She opened it. April 22nd. Sunny. I'm so happy. I'm no longer an orphan. The sisters are all as beautiful as angels. My mother is even more beautiful than I imagined. April 25th. Heavy rain. The whole family went to the temple. On the way back, everyone seemed to forget about me. I had to walk home alone in the downpour. I think I've caught a cold. April 26th. Cloudy. My fourth sister said I broke an expensive vase. I didn't, but she told me if I admitted it, she'd convince Mom to give me a phone. I agreed. I wanted something to call family with if they forgot me again. She read until her vision blurred. The next day, she came to my door in Jixiang village. Long black dress. 2 bodyguards standing back 3 meters, giving her space. She looked up at my face. I'd grown again since she'd last seen me, and for a second, she just stood there. Then she apologized. She admitted she'd been absent, admitted the family had failed me, said she'd been carrying guilt since the day she lost me as a child and never knew how to face it. She said she wanted to make it up to me, that she could give me enough money to live without worry, that she was genuinely sorry. I listened to all of it. I don't know how to write the word forgive, I said. She kept trying, explained herself, offered to try differently, said she understood if I couldn't accept it right away. Her voice broke on the last sentence. I'm an orphan, I said. My family died 15 years ago. Keep your money. Where I live is my business. I shut the door. The force was more than I intended. My strength wasn't something I always remembered to measure. The door hit her and she went down hard onto the concrete floor. I heard the impact through the door. I heard one of the bodyguards swear quietly and rush to help her up. I sat down on the edge of my bed. Outside, silence. Then, footsteps retreating. That night, Ching-han gave the diary to Lu Jin. She didn't explain why. She just handed it over and said, don't tell anyone else. Jin read it alone. She got to May 30th. My mother's expensive white dress. The blame pointed at me. Lu Jin's patient voice telling me that a real man accepts responsibility. She read the entry where I described believing her and accepting punishment. Whipped 3 times, no dinner that night, because I thought it was the way to earn love in this family. Her face flushed. She put the diary down. Then she picked it up again and read more. She sat with it for a long time. 2 days before the exam, Lu Jin recalled Fu. The daily surveillance ended. The eyes went away. Lu Jin had been waiting for exactly that. That evening, he slipped out of the mansion and caught a taxi to the heart of Jixiang village. Obsidian Billiards Club, a smoky basement hall where Liu Qingwen held court each evening. Lu Jin walked inside carrying a school bag and didn't flinch when the men surrounded him. He set 500,000 yuan on Liu Qingwen's table and said, help me kill someone. An orphan, his age, living in Jixiang village. House 1264 on Damenqiao Lane. Hunts monsters outside the city daily. Clean location. No witnesses. No police. He placed a photo on the table. Liu Qingwen pocketed everything and called for guns. Then, after Lu Jin left, he ordered his bald enforcer, Hai Gei, to follow him. Find out where this handsome young man actually lived. He believed he was hiring out a murder. He was actually setting the terms of his own destruction. In the forest the following afternoon, I was mid-hunt when my senses went sharp. Multiple footsteps at range. The weight of the steps. The particular lack of hunter's discipline. Too loud. Too deliberate. Heading straight toward my last position. I checked through the trees and counted 5. 3 of them carried guns. I climbed a tree and watched them converge on the spot where I had just been standing. The first gunman worked his way under my branch without glancing up. I dropped down behind him without a sound. What followed after that was quick. The gunman first, since guns were the only real threat. The others I could handle at close range. I moved through the trees in bursts that left the surviving gunman firing at shadows. When his magazine ran empty and he reached for the reload, the distance between us vanished in 1 step. He never finished the reload. The bald enforcer, Hai Gei, had 2 rounds left and the sense not to waste them. He tried to bargain, mentioned his boss. I kept walking. 3 men remained with functional weapons. I removed the relevant hands. They screamed. I told them to be quiet, and they were. I asked 3 questions: headquarters, numbers, the boss's schedule. Hai Gei's answers were complete and accurate. The 4th man, a henchman with nothing else to offer, mentioned a hidden room behind Liu Qingwen's desk, over $1 million in cash. I swore I wouldn't kill them. I didn't. I pointed out the red-furred rats moving through the undergrowth toward the scent of blood. Then, I climbed a tree and watched from a distance until I was certain neither of them would be making a phone call. I kept my oath. The math handled itself. After dark, I located the Obsidian Billiards Club on the main street. Watched the entrance for an hour, 30 people inside, maybe more in back rooms, music, smoke, every face wearing the particular looseness of people who believed they were untouchable. I walked through the front door. There was an iron chain lying near the entrance. I picked it up and wrapped it around the door handle from inside. A man with a ponytail came over to ask what I was doing. He didn't get to finish asking. The room understood what was happening about a second after it was already underway. Men pulled weapons from under the pool tables, knives, axes, one person with a length of pipe. They came from 3 directions and found I wasn't where they aimed. I used the tables, moved between them, using their bulk as cover, never staying still, never giving anyone an angle. Anyone who reached me met the blade once. Nobody reached me twice. Within a minute, the math of the room had changed dramatically. Someone ran to warn Lu Jyn. He came out of his office and stopped cold at what he saw. He was a second-rank martial artist, tempered bones, chi and blood weaponized into raw force. One of his kicks folded a solid oak pool table in half. He was genuinely powerful. He was also extremely slow. I danced around every strike, opened 1 wound, then 2, then 10. He couldn't land a hit. The table-splitting power means nothing if it never connects. He grew desperate. Then he tried to negotiate. I asked who hired him. He said, a very handsome young man. Villa 1245 in the Western District. Villa 1245, the Lu family address. I already knew, but there's a difference between knowing and having someone confirm it with their last coherent breath. He tried throwing billiard balls at me after that. I waited until his arms were too heavy to aim, then stepped behind him and ended it. I checked every room. There was 1 henchman in a cabinet. He didn't have long anyway after what he'd seen tonight. In the secret room behind Lu Jyn's desk, a glass bottle of advanced type 2 chi and blood enhancement potion, worth 20 million on any market. Dangerous for anyone below the 3rd rank, which meant I couldn't touch it yet. A long black knife in a wooden case, blade drawn from the sheath, heavy and razor sharp, made of something I didn't recognize. It felt right in my hand the moment I gripped it, and over 1 million yuan in cash, bundled in stacks. I packed everything, found a lighter on the desk. The fire caught quickly. I unchained the door, waited until the smoke was visible from outside, and walked away. New clothes, new hotel near the exam venue, theory exam the next morning. I wrote what I knew and left early. Then the bank to deposit the cash, a new phone, new sportswear, a haircut at a salon near the commercial center. I stood in front of the hotel mirror when I was done. I'd been transforming for 10 days. This was the cumulative effect all at once. Taller, sharper featured, built like someone who'd been training for years. The face was still mine if you knew what to look for. Most people wouldn't. The next morning at the exam center, I found my class's waiting area and stood in the back of the line. Zhang Chunhua came down the line, checking faces. He reached me and stopped. "Excuse me," he said, with genuine uncertainty. "Which school and class are you from? Have you come to the wrong place?" I let him figure it out. The look on his face when he did was the most satisfying thing that had happened in 2 weeks that didn't involve a gang. The examiner looked at me like I'd committed a crime. The candidate at my feet wasn't dead. He was just deeply asleep, which the examiner was having trouble accepting. He'd called for the medical team with the kind of urgency reserved for actual emergencies. Now he stood over the unconscious body and kept pressing on the philtrum, which wasn't going to do anything. I'd used less than 1/10 of my real strength. I genuinely thought that was conservative. The paramedic arrived in under a minute. High ponytail, sharp eyes, moving fast and competent. She knelt beside the candidate, shone a light in his pupils, checked the neck, and turned to look at me with an expression that contained several things at once. "Cervical spine," she said. "He needs imaging." Then, to me, "How hard did you hit him?" "Not very," I said honestly. She stared at me for a moment. Then, she called for the stretcher team and went back to work. The second opponent, gastrointestinal impact, 2 minutes of examination. The third, something in the shoulder. I'd aimed lower this time. The fourth, the paramedic arrived, looked at me, and said nothing, just started taking observations. By the 8th call, she was irritated in the specific way of someone who has done a job correctly 8 times in a row and is running out of patience for the conditions creating that job. "You're doing this on purpose," she said. "I'm not," I said, which was true. I just had no real reference point for how fragile ordinary people were. I'd been fighting sharp-toothed rabbits and Black Tiger gang members for 10 days. The gap had become invisible to me. "Control yourself," she said. "I'll try," I said. "I sincerely hope I never have to see you again today." She said that at fight 8. I made it to fight 15. I heard her voice again from the next arena over on number 12, then 14. After 15, she stopped appearing, which meant I'd finally run out of C-level opponents to be matched against. The wristband buzzed. A broadcast came over the exam center speakers. Lu Sheng, 15 wins, 45 points, promoted to Class B. My classmates were in the rest area when I returned. Most of them were bruised, some still catching their breath. They looked at me like I'd appeared from a different exam. Zhang Chunhua blinked at me. I reported my result and went to find something to eat. The B-level exam arena was larger, the candidates better. A teacher named Wang Lei had a group of students he'd clearly trained personally, walking around the venue like they owned it. His biggest student was a young man named Hua Gang, nearly 2 meters tall, chest like a wall, the particular confidence of someone who'd never lost to anyone his own age. He saw me arrive promoted from C-level and made a comment about carrying 10 C-level promotions with one hand. I said, let's wait and see. The examiner matched us second round. He came in hard and fast, a straight punch with real force behind it. I caught his fists. He blinked. Then he kicked, full power, all his training behind it, aimed at my thigh. I let him. The sound was wrong. I looked down. Hua Gang's leg had bent at a 90-degree angle at the knee, the kind of angle legs don't make. He dropped immediately. His teacher sprinted toward the ring, screaming. Jiang Weru, the paramedic from the C-level, looked at the injury, looked at me, looked at the injury again. He kicked you, she said with great effort. Yes, I said, and broke his own leg on your shin. That's what it looks like. Teacher Wang Lei was incoherent. Jiang Chunhua, who had come over to watch, said carefully that the injury appeared to be self-inflicted in the medical sense, which did not help Wang Lei's feelings. The man wanted someone to blame. The examiner refused to disqualify me. Wang Lei issued a team-wide order, forfeit immediately if you're matched against Lu Sheng. His remaining students did exactly that, appeared in the ring, saw my face, and raised their hands. I had a 10-0 record in the B level by the time the afternoon session ended. A refined man in a white shirt was waiting when I came out. He introduced himself as Zhang Zuozong, Dean of Cambrian Academy, 8th rank venerable. He said he'd been watching through binoculars from the viewing platform. He said he'd rarely seen a talent like mine in his years of running the academy. He offered mentorship, resources, his personal attention. I thanked him and said my target was Holy Martial Academy, 7 martial saints on faculty. What they had, Cambrian couldn't match. The 6th tempering method in particular, I'd attempted it the night before and discovered my ki blood had no impurities left to refine. I was ready, but the method itself was restricted information, available only at top 10 academies. Without the 6th tempering, I'd hit a ceiling. Zhang Zuozong pressed his 8th rank aura slightly, not aggressive, just testing. I stood in it without moving. After a moment, he let it go. His expression changed into something I couldn't quite read. His daughter Zhang Yueru appeared from 3 meters away, looking at me in the way you look at a problem you've been assigned. Her father wanted a phone number, she'd said, for recruitment purposes. She asked for mine. I declined and walked faster. She matched my pace without apparent effort. I turned a corner. She turned the corner. We walked like that across half the exam venue before I accepted she was going to outlast me. No, I said. You haven't heard his full offer, she said. No, I said. She said something about a lonely man not being able to outlast a determined woman. I chose not to engage with that and went to find the A-level registration point. The entire Lu family was at the A-level venue entrance. They'd come for Lu Jin, who'd been performing exactly as expected. First seed, 38 consecutive wins, 114 points. He was on pace for the top position in Baixing City. The family was in the middle of congratulating each other on producing a champion when I walked past. Lu Qinghan saw me first. Relief crossed her face. She'd worried about me in the slums, the wilderness, the things she'd heard through the Fu reports. I looked healthy. I looked like someone who'd been doing something rather than suffering. Lin Shuya said something sharp. Lu Qianru followed with something sharper. I stopped. I looked at Lu Jin. Check your account, I said. If 500,000 yuan went missing recently, the recipients were the Black Tiger Gang, which has since been eliminated. The family went still. Lu Jin's expression didn't change. I'll give him that. He produced his explanation without hesitation. A boxing manual. Black market. He'd been meaning to mention it. Legitimate purchase. He had the documentation. Lu Gentian looked at me and told me to present evidence or stop making accusations. I looked back at him. I thought about what I'd extracted from Lu Qingwen's last coherent moments. Villa 1245, a handsome young man, his exact words. I had no documentation. A gang boss's dying confession wasn't evidence a 7th rank patriarch couldn't dismiss. I'll settle this properly when we meet in the exam, I said. Zhang Weru was standing nearby. I hadn't noticed her following me. She watched the exchange without comment and went back to her medical station. The A-level exam was a stadium. Tens of thousands of people. Screens running real-time leaderboards. 542 candidates and enough cameras to make everything feel important. My first fight, a single kick, The man went off the stage. The audience fell quiet for a second, then loud. In the stands, Lu Jin sat up straighter. I felt it from the ring, the attention shift. A 7th-ranked grandmaster, watching a candidate move and recalculating. Lu Qinghan's expression was something between pride and pain. Lu Jiaxin was very still. Lu Qianru said he got lucky. I stopped taking it seriously after that. For the next few hours, I fought at suppressed power, deliberate. I picked up opponents who could actually challenge my technique, not overwhelm me physically, but make me think. I let them hit me. I absorbed the strikes to test how different angles felt. I practiced reading footwork patterns, anticipating attack vectors, matching force precisely enough to control without destroying. My ranking fell to 278th, 39 points. In the VIP room, Lu Jin revised his assessment downward. Lin Shuya said she'd known all along. Lu Qianru was triumphant. Lu Qinghan watched every match carefully and said nothing, because she'd noticed something the others hadn't. I hadn't lost a single one. The wristband matched me against Su Liluo, ranked 11th, granddaughter of Principal Su Yongqiang, who was in the VIP room with the Education Bureau directors. She moved with the butterfly walk, a technique that made her footwork genuinely unpredictable, weight transferring between feet in patterns that shifted speed and angle without warning. She recognized me. She told me she still believed I'd cheated my way through the registration, that if she beat me now, she'd have grounds to report me again. Her voice had the edge of someone who'd been embarrassed before and was ready to redirect that at a target. I let her come. The butterfly walk was impressive. I stopped attacking and started watching. Light foot, solid foot, feint on the left, commit on the right. The tell was in the supporting leg, the small adjustment before she transferred weight. It took 3 exchanges to confirm the pattern. After that, I just waited. Every time she came close, my hand moved, left cheek. She flew sideways, looked at me in disbelief, and came back, right cheek. She came back again, left cheek. She staggered, came back, right cheek again. I wasn't trying to end the fight. I was teaching her something. In the VIP room, Director Qin had stopped watching Su Liluo and started watching me. He spoke to his colleague, Director Chen. They pulled up my file. The numbers appeared on the screen. 163.17 calories at registration, 324 at the pre-exam blood test, 10 days apart, exactly double. Su Liluo's face was swollen enough by the 6th slap that her grandfather didn't recognize her from the viewing platform. She came at me one more time. I stepped aside and she went off the stage. She sat at the edge of the ring for a moment, hands over her face. Then she climbed down without speaking and walked away. Zhang Yueru from the medical station. You couldn't have just knocked her out normally? She would have come back, I said. That's the point, she said. You knock her out, match over, everyone goes home. She paused. You wanted her to keep getting up, didn't you? I had nothing useful to say to that. The investigation order came from Director Qin within the hour. 5 hours to analyze the blood sample. Zhang Chunhua was summoned. Principal Su Yongqiang was called to the director's office. The machinery of institutional alarm, moving at institutional speed. I sat in the rest area and ate a protein bar. 5 hours later, no prohibited substances. Clean results. The doubling of qi blood was medically legitimate. The tempering process MC had undergone 5 complete tempering cycles. Qi blood, purified past what most candidates achieve in years, showed nothing that could be called cheating. Director Qin closed the investigation. He didn't look pleased. Principal Su Yongqiang left the office with the expression of a man who had just done something professionally embarrassing in front of people who mattered. His granddaughter's face was still swollen. My record was still clean. The A-level exam continued. Lu Jin sat at the top of the leaderboard with 114 points. I was at 39. The gap looked enormous. I wasn't worried about the gap. I had something more valuable than points right now. I'd just spent a day fighting against the best candidates in Baxing City, at suppressed power, absorbing technique from every exchange, reading patterns I'd never encountered before. My combat intelligence had grown more in 8 hours than it had in the entire Phase 2 grind. When I stopped suppressing, the points would come quickly. I looked at the leaderboard, looked at Lu Jin's name. He had no idea I was coming. The investigation was background noise. Su Yongqiang could do whatever he wanted with the blood tests. I'd lived through one of these already, at the registration, and the result would be identical, clean. No drugs, no cheating, nothing actionable. He could press Zhang Chunhua for answers. He could pull surveillance footage. He could call every official he knew. The facts of my situation were the same facts they'd been a week ago. I grew fast through methods that don't show up in a sample. I was at rank 88 and climbing. The wristband matched me against Li Yongheng, 3rd place overall, 2 meters tall, built like someone had assembled a person from spare parts intended for a larger species. His reputation around the exam center was that he'd personally carried a car. I didn't know if that was true. His first few fights had ended very quickly, not because he was fast, but because whoever he hit stopped wanting to continue. He saw me arrive at the ring, and his posture changed, the way it does when someone adjusts from a warm-up to a real fight. I opened at 70% and hit him in the abdomen. He moved back 3 steps. His eyes lit up. Finally, he said, "Someone exciting." We traded for 5 minutes. He was a power fighter. Not much technique, but he didn't need technique when his fist carried that kind of weight. The problem was that his body couldn't sustain the output. By minute 3, he was visibly slowing. By minute 4, he was fighting on willpower. I was still fine. My constitution absorbed whatever landed, and my energy didn't drop the way his did. He stayed upright through sheer stubbornness. I'll give him that. "You're strong," he said, near the end, breathing hard. "Stronger than I thought. Thanks. Lu Jin is at the top," he said. "I wouldn't underestimate him. That person has no obvious weaknesses." The buzzer ended the fight. Draw. 1 point each. Li Yongheng dropped to one knee the moment the examiner called it. I helped him up. He looked at my wristband, rank 88, and shook his head like he couldn't reconcile what he'd just experienced with the number. I went to find water. The academy scramble started quietly and became a small crisis. The Holy Martial representatives and the Tiangang and Xuanwu scouts had been watching my fight and were now having urgent conversations with Director Qin in the observation room. I couldn't hear them from the floor, but I could watch their faces on the overhead screen feeds. The kind of energy that happens when something valuable has appeared in an unexpected place. Director Qin was handling them strategically. I learned later that he'd quietly held back a blood test report, the one showing my key blood purity from 5 tempering cycles. He had reasons for the timing. The cheating investigation closed without ceremony. The blood test had found exactly what it should find, nothing. Su Yongqiang walked out of the director's office, looking like a man who had prepared a very convincing argument and arrived to find the building wasn't there anymore. I was climbing again, 53rd, 31st, 11th. His name flashed on my wristband at 5th place. Candidate 10125, Lu Jin. First overall, 38 wins, 114 points. I'd been working toward this moment since I sat on the floor of his living room and watched his face over his brother's arm. The family was in the stands. They'd come for his coronation, to cheer the boy they'd chosen. Now they were going to watch something different. Lu Qinghan had a look I recognized from the registration day, relief and worry at the same time. The rest of them weren't looking at me at all. Lu Gentian was speaking to someone. Then, someone showed him the leaderboard. He stopped talking and looked at the number. Zhang Weru appeared at the medical station near the ring and crossed her arms. I'd noticed she'd been tracking my matches for most of the afternoon. Some professional obligation, probably. She took her job seriously. We stood across from each other in the ring. Lu Jin spoke first. He always spoke first. He addressed me as family, with warmth and a hint of sadness, suggesting that whatever had passed between us was a misunderstanding that could still be resolved. He had a gift for this, making the audience feel his gentleness, making them believe the disagreement was the other person's fault. "You've clearly got one thing wrong," I said. "I'm just an orphan. My whole family died when I was 3 years old." The examiner called start. His technique was real. Mianyun Zhenyue Palm, soft force that redirected incoming power rather than absorbing it. Against an ordinary opponent, it was highly effective. My first punch was returned at me with a twist that altered the angle. It didn't hurt, but it confirmed what I needed to know about his style. I stopped attacking for a moment. In my peripheral vision, I could see the crowd, the family, the academy screens. I didn't need them. I only needed the next 10 seconds. I opened the panel mid-fight and put 2 points into strength and 1 into agility. The transformation was fast. My frame swelled, muscles expanding noticeably, shoulders filling out, then resettled in under 10 seconds as the system redistributed the mass efficiently. The uniform strained, my speed sharpened. The entire sequence was visible to everyone watching. Lu Jin's expression shifted. He'd expected to fight the same person he'd been redirecting a moment ago. The next punch didn't redirect. It went through. He flew to the edge of the ring, not off it, barely, and caught himself. I crossed the distance between us at the new speed and hit him again. He stood back up. He had real will, I'll give him that too. Both my brothers did. I switched from punching to slapping. A slap says something that a punch doesn't. A punch could mean equal. A slap means you don't merit the serious effort. A slap is what you use on someone who's misbehaving. 3 years of rattan cane, false accusations, stolen scraps of family affection, an assassination contract worth 1 million yuan, and now his face, and now my hand, in front of 1,000 people and every academy recruiter in Beijing City. Left cheek. He stumbled sideways, came back. His eyes were on fire. right cheek. The family in the stands was frozen. I could see Lu Qinghan's expression from the ring. She was watching the family more than she was watching me, waiting for the moment. Lu Jin tried to run, not off the ring. That would mean surrender, but he circled the arena trying to create distance. I cut him off. He turned. I was already there. Another slap. In the stands, I heard Lu Qinghan's voice cut through. Every time that rattan cane hit Sheng, it tore his skin. They all stood and watched and said nothing. And now they couldn't take 10 seconds of this? Lin Shuya went pale. Lu Zhentian's jaw tightened. Lu Jiaxian looked at the floor. The examiner announced 1 minute remaining. I heard it. My mind did what minds do when they've been focused intensely for 10 minutes. It registered the information. My eyes moved to the wristband. 1 second of distraction. Lu Jin had been waiting for exactly that second. The Mianyun Genue palm has a killing move, a technique that concentrates ki blood into a cone shape, targeting the heart. Lu Zhentian had taught it to him. The technique is designed to cause cardiac arrest. In an exam ring, it looks like a close-range palm strike to the chest. He hit me square. The pain was sudden and deep, not like the surface pain of a punch. This was inside. I stepped back. My hand came up to my chest. My vision went white at the edges. The arena noise cut in and out. Then I understood what he'd just done. He pressed forward, thinking I was going to drop. My heart is not a normal heart. 5 temperings, a constitution stat that's been climbing since the first chicken in that market stall. His technique is designed to interrupt cardiac rhythm, but the rhythm he tried to interrupt was running on a machine several grades above the one he trained on, less than 1 second of weakness. I looked at his face. He had been waiting for my death and instead found me looking back at him. The slaps were over. I hit him with everything. No management, no precision targeting, no extended humiliation. Just force, directed at a person who had tried to kill me 3 times. The Shilin steed in my past life, the Black Tiger Gang, and now this. I drove him backward across the ring with a barrage that he couldn't defend. His hands came up to protect his head. I broke through them. He stumbled against the ropes. I stepped back and gathered it all. The orphanage, the storage room, the rattan cane, the false accusations, the surveillance, the contract, the killing move in the ring while the examiner watched, and I put it into 1 punch aimed at his chest. He flew 10 meters, maybe more. He hit the ring floor and didn't bounce, just stopped. Zhang Yueru was inside the ropes before the dust settled. She took 1 look at his chest, made a hand gesture for the stretcher team. Broken ribs, at least 2, she told the examiner quietly. The positioning was dangerous, close to the heart. He'd survive, but nothing about the next few months was going to be comfortable. Lu Jin was conscious. His eyes were open and full of something that wasn't quite tears yet, but was heading there. He'd spent years building the perfect golden child image. 1 exam, 1 ring, 1 hour. Is he dead? I asked Zhang Yueru flatly. She gave me a look that I'll categorize as extremely unamused. No, I turned away. It was a pity, but it wasn't a pity. He was worth more alive, where I could watch him rebuild and then dismantle it again, where the story of what he'd tried to do in this ring could follow him to every school, every relationship, every room he walked into for the rest of his life. In the stands, Lu Qinghan's voice was cutting through the family's reactions with the kind of controlled anger she usually reserved for board meetings. She had the diary, and she had surveillance footage, and she had 3 years of Wang Ma's careful observations. She laid it all out for them while their golden boy was being stretchered off the ring. How Lu Jin framed every incident. The watch, the vases, the dresses, the food that went missing. In MC's handwriting and on camera, the documentation of systematic abuse. Lin Shuya's face was something I couldn't put a name to. She sat down heavily on the nearest seat and stayed there. Lu Zhentian's face was different. He looked at me, not with guilt, with calculation. An asset he'd discarded was now the best performer in the examination, and he was already working out how to reclaim it. I knew that look. He'd always used that look on Lu Jin. I walked off the arena floor and didn't look at my family once. The final ranking came through on the wristband. First place, Bexing City Martial Arts Examination, this year's cohort. The academy representatives were in full crisis mode. Holy Marshal, Tiangang, Xuanwu, all of them pushing for my contact information, my transcript, a meeting, any in. Director Qin had apparently released the blood test report with its 5 tempering data at that exact moment. From the sidelines, Zhang Zuozong watched everything with the look of a man watching a door he'd been told was locked turn out to be slightly open. Zhang Yueru walked up to me after the results posted. "You could have ended that earlier," she said. "Yes. You chose not to." "Yes." She looked at me for a moment, not the paramedic look, the other one. The one she'd been developing since she watched me face the Lu family at the A-level entrance. "The academies are going to eat you alive tonight," she said. "I know." I found a seat in the rest area and sat down. The exam was over. Lu Jin was in the medical bay with a chest injury and a future that looked considerably different than it had this morning. The ranking screen kept my name at the top. It wasn't a trophy, it was a tool. I needed to be the number that opened the door to a top 10 academy. The door was open. What it felt like, whether it felt like anything, I'll leave out. The people who should have cared were sitting in that stadium right now, learning for the first time what had been true about their house for 3 years. I'd said everything I had to say to them on a ring. The crowd chanted my name. I want to describe it accurately because I've lived this twice now, and neither time did it feel the way I expected. Lu Sheng, Lu Sheng, Lu Sheng. Stadium full of people who'd spent the morning watching me dismantle the exam. The scoreboard had my name at the top with a 33-point gap. Zhang Chunhua was crying somewhere behind me. I stood in the arena and heard it and felt not much. Something was happening in my chest. I recognized it as significant without being able to name it. The most celebrated day of 2 lifetimes. And what I mostly noticed was that I was hungry and my knuckles were sore. Maybe that's what winning actually feels like when there's no one waiting for you on the other side. The family was waiting outside the exam center. I saw them before they saw me. All of them. Lu Gentian, Lin Shuya, Lu Qinghan, Lu Jiaxin, Lu Qianru, standing together in the waiting area like a delegation. Lu Jin's hospitalization had apparently been processed. The shock had apparently been processed. And now they'd convened for the next order of business, reclaiming the thing they'd thrown away. Lin Shuya came to me first. She was crying. Genuinely, I think. Her face had the specific quality of someone who's arrived at a reckoning they can't walk back from. She apologized. She said she'd been wrong. She said she would be better. Her voice broke several times, and she didn't appear to be performing. I watched her cry and felt something I didn't want to examine too closely. "I'm an orphan," I said. "Where would I have a home?" I said it without anger. It was just the truth. Lu Gentian stepped forward when it was clear Lin Shuya wasn't reaching me. He was different from my father at the beginning of this story. More careful now, more deliberate. He'd watched his best investment get hospitalized, and his better investment refused to come home, and he was recalculating in real time. He offered me everything: cultivation resources, family backing, expert guidance. He was precise about the numbers, what top academies would provide versus what the Lu family could provide directly. He spoke about Marshall Saint potential with the clinical accuracy of a man discussing a commodity. "If you were rational enough," I said, "you would still be in that cage, suffering abuse every day, waiting for someone to value you." I looked at him. "You came to apologize because I have talent. You would have been content to watch me rot if I had none." He didn't deny it. "If that's your final word," he said, cold returning to his voice, "you will regret this." I kept walking. The admissions meeting was scheduled 2 hours after the exam ended. Time enough for a meal. Zhang Chunhua had suggested we eat before going in. The academies would be fighting over me, he said, and I should go in fed and rested so I could negotiate from a position of strength. I ate while he talked about Holy Martial Academy's facilities. He'd done research. He was excited on my behalf in the way teachers get when a student finally performs beyond every expectation they carried. I let him talk. I thought about Lu Gentian's final look, not rage exactly, something colder, the look of a man deciding on a response. I arrived at the admissions hall as the #1 scorer in Beixing City's martial arts examination. Every admissions officer in the room knew that. The digital boards were still showing rankings. Li Yongheng, second place by 33 points, was surrounded by representatives from 3 major academies the moment he walked in. Hands extended, materials offered, voices warm with welcome. I walked past the same booths and no one moved. I stood in the middle of the floor and something clarified. I'd been here before, not this room, this feeling. The room where everyone has decided in advance, where asking the obvious question reveals everyone knew except you, Li Yongheng noticed. To his credit, he dragged me over to the Holy Martial Academy booth himself and demanded they explain their behavior to the #1 candidates standing in front of them. The woman in black looked at me with an expression I recognized from 3 years of dinner tables. "You don't meet our requirements," she said. "Specifically," I said. She didn't answer specifically. The Tiangong booth, same. Xuanwu, same. The second-tier academies had apparently received the same briefing. No one offered materials. No one extended a hand. Director Qin found me near the exit. He told me what had happened, quietly, and with something that looked like shame. Lu Gentian had arrived at the meeting over an hour before the exam ended. He'd told the admissions officers that I had severe personality defects, that I'd grown up in an orphanage, that I'd severed ties with my family, that I'd hospitalized my own brother in the ring, a 7th-rank grandmaster speaking about his own son, and Su Yongqiang, whose granddaughter I'd slapped in front of 1,000 people, had invoked a historical precedent called Han Xiao, an abused orphan admitted to a top academy who eventually massacred his own family and joined a demon emperor. The comparison was irresistible. No dean would risk it. They're all saying the same thing, Director Chin said. The Han Xiao calamity. I'd been warned about this, not directly, just from watching my father's face when I walked away. The threat in his voice hadn't been empty. He'd moved faster than I expected. I laughed. Director Chin looked at me with the specific concern of someone who's watched a person receive terrible news and respond incorrectly. I'm used to it, I said. Zhang Zuozong appeared from the side of the room. While other admissions officers were watching and making comments I chose not to hear. He was the only one who walked toward me rather than away. He stood in front of me in his white shirt and said simply, "Cambrian Academy would like to offer you a place." The other academies laughed. Literally, some of them. A declining school with no martial saints, taking the one candidate no one else would touch. I asked him one question. Did Cambrian have a tempering method beyond the 5th? He told me they had the 6th and the 7th. I looked at him. The 6th and 7th QI blood tempering methods were rare. They'd existed in his family's records since his father's time. Every martial saint had completed at least 5 temperings. The 7th was something rarer. Fewer than 10 people in the world had achieved it. That information lived only at academies with genuine martial saint lineage. Thank you, I said, and I meant it in a way I hadn't meant anything to this family for 3 years. For opening the last door, we met in a private room. He laid out Cambrian's terms without embellishment. Free tuition, 200,000 dragon coins per year, 1 chi and blood enhancement potion per semester, a single apartment. He acknowledged the terms were modest. Cambrian was in decline, had been for over a decade since losing its martial saints in demon wars. He showed me a photo, the academy compound, 5,600 MU, 12,000 students and staff, forest surrounding the campus that doubled as training grounds. It had been a great academy once. It was trying to find its way back. I asked if I could arrive early and stay at his home before school started. I had matters to handle. He said yes without asking what the matters were. That trust, extended to someone every other adult in the room had just dismissed, was not a small thing. I filed it next to the feeling I'd had in the exam arena and couldn't name. Lu Jyn's secrets were from my past life. I'd spent years after death watching him, watching everyone, actually, but him most carefully. From that vantage, I'd seen things the living version of me never could. The affair with Chen Luoyan, financial director of the Demon Hunter Guild branch in northern Sheng, her pregnancy, and the embezzlement, 1.8 billion yuan in guild funds, laundered through Chen Luoyan's financial access over the course of years. In my past life, Lin Shuya's family had eventually discovered the affair through other means. The confrontation had been violent and costly. The timing had been wrong. Lu Jyn had been mid-breakthrough and absorbed the damage rather than fighting back. This time, the timing would be mine. I needed to be less recognizable. I added 3 points to agility, which trimmed excess muscle and made my frame leaner. Different silhouette. Then, I bought 2 translucent cameras, fingernail-sized, high-tech, 200,000 yuan each, from a specialized shop in the outer city, the kind that requires specific equipment to detect, not the human mental energy scan that a grandmaster would default to. Chen Luoyan's villa was in the eastern residential district. I'd memorized the address from past life knowledge. The door code was the date she'd met Lu Jyn, the kind of sentimental code that powerful men allow around their private lives. I went in at dusk. The living room camera went in the corner, wedged behind a decorative frame. The bedroom camera was harder. I had to work quickly and quietly. The financial records were exactly where they'd been in my other life. Printed statements in the bottom drawer of the study desk, kept as blackmail insurance in case the relationship soured. I photographed each page. At 9 p.m., I heard a car. They came in together, Lu Jyn with the woman, relaxed in a way I'd never seen him at home, not performing authority, not managing the family calculus, just present. He stopped in the living room and went still. I was in the ceiling cavity, motionless. His mental energy spread outward like a slow wave. I felt it pass through the space, not searching for electronics, searching for living presences. The cameras were silent, translucent, ambient. The wave found nothing. He dismissed it. Stayed for the night, he told her. Added that he'd take her to the prenatal checkup in the morning. She said something about the woman at home, called her incredibly stupid, said she was easy to manage. I watched and recorded until I had everything I needed. The next evening, I edited the footage, the most direct, undeniable moments, and sent it to Lin Shuya from an untraceable card. The header read, Lu Jin cheated on his wife. Then I went to sleep. What Lin Shuya did with the video was not something I watched in real time. I didn't need to. I knew from my past life exactly what Lin Zhonghai did when someone disrespected his daughter. Her father was an 8th rank venerable, and he had 3 sons who'd inherited the family's cultivation gifts. She would drive to the Lin compound. She would kneel. Her father would call the brothers. Lin Guanjun, 8th rank. The 2 others, 7th rank. Collective enough to make a 7th rank grandmaster remember he had limits. The wheels were in motion. I'd planted them gently, and they were turning now without my hand. I had one piece of evidence left to deploy, the embezzlement photographs, ready for Lu Jentian's rival Zhao Gang when the moment was right. That would be the career. The affair was the marriage. Between them, Lu Jentian's entire world. I looked out the window of the hotel room. He'd destroyed my future because I refused to come back. He'd expected that to break me, force me to crawl home, and accept whatever terms he offered. The man had never once tried to understand me. Even now, with all his power and intelligence, he genuinely believed that destroying someone's options was the same as controlling them. He'd run that play on everyone around him for decades, and it had always worked. I wasn't everyone. I thought about Zhang Zuozong opening a door that everyone else had sealed, about the 6th tempering method waiting at Cambrian Academy, about the 3 months before school started, time I would use to do things Lu Jin had no knowledge of and no defenses against. I was not afraid of the future. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I was genuinely curious what it would look like. I watched from my hotel room via the cloud feed. The Lin family arrived at Chen Luoyan's villa at 11 p.m. 4 of them, Lin Zhonghai, 80-something years old and built like a retired war machine, and his 3 sons. They went through the iron gate the direct way being Lin Guanjun lowering one shoulder and walking into it. Lu Jentian and Chen Luoyan had been discussing nursery furniture arrangements. Lin Guanjun put Lu Jentian through the interior wall. The impact was fast and casual, the kind of power that doesn't need to try. Flying cement caught Chen Luoyan from the side. She went down, clutching her stomach. The sound she made was not quiet. My baby is gone. I sat in the hotel chair, watching this through a fingernail-sized camera in the corner of a villa I'd broken into a week ago, and I laughed until my eyes were wet. Not because it was funny, because there's a particular feeling when a thing you built in silence and patience finally goes off exactly as designed, and the feeling doesn't have a name, I know. Lu Jentian recovered, 7th rank grandmaster. It takes more than a wall to keep one down for long. He crawled back into the room and tried to say something to Lin Shuya. She let him finish. Then she asked him one question. Did he ever love her, even a small amount, in over 20 years? He hesitated. The Lin brothers interpreted the hesitation as a second answering and did something about it. When he was coherent again, Lin Shuya put a choice in front of him. Kill Chen Luoyan, the woman who had just lost her child on his behalf, or divorce and leave with nothing. She gave him time to think. He said, okay, one word. Barely a pause. Chen Luoyan, from wherever she'd managed to drag herself, watched the man she'd risked everything for agree to murder her without finishing a sentence. I watched her face on the feed. Lin Shuya smiled with water in her eyes. She said it was a test. She said she already knew, but she needed to hear it. A stone heart, she called it. 20 years, and she'd mistaken cold stone for quiet love. She told Lu Jentian what she wanted instead. Go to the admissions hall and publicly retract every lie he'd told about MC. Do it loud enough for everyone who heard the original to hear the correction. As long as MC could get into a major academy, she'd hold the divorce in abeyance. Lu Jentian bowed his head. From my hotel room, I watched him bow and thought, this is still not over. The embezzlement evidence went out the same night, delivered by a man who got 1,000 yuan to hand an envelope to someone named Zhao Gang. The contents were financial records I'd photographed in Chen Luoyan's study. The pages with Lu Jentian's signature on transactions totaling 1.8 billion yuan. Zhao Gang was Lu Jentian's rival in the guild hierarchy. He had every reason to move fast, and no reason to ask where the information came from. By the time Chairman Feng Yaoyang was looking at the documents, I was eating breakfast. Lu Jentian appeared at the admissions examination hall the next morning. He stood on the platform and used vital energy to amplify his voice, the same technique 7th rank martial artists use when they want to be heard across training grounds. And he told the assembled admissions officers that everything he'd said about his son was wrong. MC had no personality defects. He was introverted, perhaps, by the standards of people who'd never had anything to be guarded about, but the character assassination had been fabricated. The crowd didn't applaud. Someone asked why a father would slander his own child. Someone else said he should kneel. He bowed instead, deeply, to people who had deferred to him for years, while they said things about him that I'll leave out. His face went through several phases of color. He endured it, because he had no choice, and because Lin Guanjun was standing 3 meters away with an expression that suggested he found reasons easily. Then, Director Chin, with the particular pleasure of a man who's had a bad week and finally gets to deliver one good piece of news, told the assembled hall that MC had registered at Cambrian Academy the day before. His file had already been collected. The room understood what that meant. The 3 major academies descended on Zhang Zuozong within the hour. I was at Cambrian when it happened. I'd come early, as arranged, and was staying in Zhang Zuozong's house before the semester started. He came to find me in the garden with a phone in his hand and an expression I hadn't seen from him before. They'd threatened Cambrian's resource allocation, indefinitely suspended, the Xuanwu Dean had said, death sentence for a school already running thin. The Tiangong representative had been condescending about it, as if explaining to a child why they couldn't keep a toy. The holy marshal woman had been coldly certain that no one in their right mind would turn down a top 3 academy. They'd insisted Zhang call me on speakerphone so I could hear the offers directly. He called. I heard the room on the other end, multiple voices, the particular acoustic of a space full of self-important people, confident in the outcome. I think, I said, you're all very funny. Silence. You didn't do a single check. You heard one man's story and sentenced me without asking one question. Then, a week passes, the story falls apart, and now you're calling me like I should be grateful you've generously reversed course. The Holy Marshal Dean started speaking. Something about misunderstandings, about the quality of her academy's resources. You're a frigid old woman, I said. The look in your eyes that day was answer enough. Stay away from me. She stopped speaking. Xuanwu's dean, Tiangong's bald representative, 7 others in the room who'd stood around watching the original Blacklist and hadn't said a word. I went through them one at a time. I remembered each face clearly, the expressions of people watching someone else receive consequences they don't question, the slight satisfaction some of them had carried while pretending to be neutral. I remember all of you, I said, so don't waste your breath. Zhang Zuozong was very still on his end of the call. I said, Dean Zhang was the only person in that hall who didn't listen to slander and chose to believe me instead. His choice mattered more to me than every resource offer combined. I'd chosen Cambrian. Nothing would change that. The threats came immediately. You'll regret this. Our graduates run every major institution. We can ensure Cambrian never recovers its former standing. One career decision will follow you for the rest of your martial arts path. At next year's college competition, I said, I'll show you what a true genius looks like. I ended the call. In the background, before I did, I heard Lu Jentian's voice trying to break through, shouting for me to choose a major academy, his voice doing the thing it does when he's lost control of a situation. How dare you talk to me, I said, and cut the line. Zhang Zuozong's throat moved. He looked away toward the window. His eyes were wet. I hadn't expected that. I wasn't sure what to do with it, so I left him to it and went inside. Feng Yaoyang's summons arrived for Lu Jentian that same afternoon. He went to the guild offices. The embezzlement documents were on the table. 1.8 billion. His name on every page. Feng Yaoyang was not subtle about his feelings. Resign, or it goes to headquarters. Guild headquarters doesn't hand down fines. It hands down executions. Lu Jentian signed. He went to Lu Qinghan's office next. He needed 1.8 billion yuan to repay the guild and avoid more severe consequences. He explained everything. She listened. She said she ran a company, not a money printing machine. She could mobilize 600 million at maximum. He'd need to find the rest elsewhere. He went home. Lin Shuya was waiting with a lawyer and Lin Guanjun. She'd heard about the academy situation. MC was at Cambrian, not a top school, because his own father had poisoned his chances before he arrived. She looked at Lu Jentian with an expression I've only seen on people who've stopped feeling anything useful. The terms, transfer all shares in the family company to Lu Qinghan, sign a divorce agreement leaving with nothing. She'd cover the debt. The only question was whether he accepted her terms or dealt with the Lin brothers' terms. He said, okay, no argument, no negotiation, no attempt to preserve anything. He went upstairs, packed 2 suitcases of clothes, and walked out of the house he'd spent 20 years building on Lin family money. Lin Guanjun watched him go from the door and said, don't come back for any reason. The next visit results in broken legs and no cultivation. Later, I pieced together what happened at Lu Jentian's parents' house from what I was able to confirm secondhand. He told them he'd been set up. He called in his 3 brothers. They pulled surveillance footage from the cameras around Chen Luoyan's neighborhood and found a masked figure who knew the door code to her villa, moved with the careful precision of someone familiar with the layout, and then left before the Lin family arrived. One of the brothers noted the figure was thin. Lu Jyn started to dismiss it. MC had been scrawny, and thin didn't fit the threat he'd assessed. Then, Lu Jin pointed out something. Lu Sheng had always been thin. Then, he'd transformed. But a person who could control their own muscles, the way MC had demonstrated during the exam, could they also force themselves temporarily back into a slimmer frame? Lu Jyn's face changed. He had the motive. He had the foreknowledge, door codes, the villa layout, information only someone from inside the affair's orbit would possess. He had the physical capability. He had the reason to destroy the man who'd publicly humiliated him and buried his academic future. Lu Jyn said my name, and the way he said it was not quiet. I hadn't eliminated the footage. I'd known that was a risk when I chose not to spend extra days scrubbing the surrounding streets. The calculation had been that the evidence would be circumstantial. A masked figure that fit a profile wasn't a confession. He couldn't go to the police without confessing the affair and the embezzlement. He couldn't go to the guild. He had no institutional leverage left. What he had left was personal, and the Lu family brothers. I noted this and continued what I was doing. Elsewhere, Lin Shuya lay in a fever for the better part of 2 days. The maid said she kept calling my name in her sleep, saying she was sorry, asking if she could kneel for me, asking if it was too late. I heard this much later and didn't know what to do with it, so I didn't do anything. Lu Qinghan sat down with the financial reality of covering 1.8 billion from her company's earnings. Years of payments. She told Lu Jiaxin, who called Lu Chanru, who was somewhere making internet content, until she dropped her phone and sat on the floor. Lu Jin woke up in the hospital to this news. Broken ribs, shattered future, father gone, family finances destroyed. He lay there and stared at the ceiling. I understood something about that feeling. I went to bed in Zhang Zuozong's guest room, in a house where someone had set a table with food and asked about my day, and I slept better than I had in either of my lives. The Lu family was behind me now. What was in front of me was Cambrian and the 6th tempering, and whatever came after, that was enough. For now, that was more than enough. While I was being flown to Cambrian, Lu Jyn was settling a 3 million yuan debt. The debtor was a man named Lu Gaofeng, a distant cousin, the kind of relative who exists in the peripheral orbit of powerful families, useful occasionally. The settlement terms: Lu Gaofeng's son, Lu Mingfei, currently studying at Cambrian as a 3rd-rank cultivator, would make MC's time there as difficult as possible. Ideally, cripple him. The 3 million debt, canceled in exchange. It was a tidy transaction. It cost Lu Jyn nothing and gave him a snake inside the walls of the place I'd just escaped to. I didn't know any of this at the time. Cambrian Academy was a fortress. I'd expected decline. What I found was military architecture that looked designed to survive a siege. 100-meter metal spires with lightning systems, cannon ports visible from the shuttle approach, fortifications built by people who understood that academies are defense positions as much as schools. The campus behind those walls was cleaner than I'd expected, older than I'd hoped, and more alive than the name Declining Academy had prepared me for. Zhang Weru picked me up from the arrival point. She walked with the purposeful energy of someone who had several plans running simultaneously and was monitoring all of them. We went to her family's house first. I've eaten at a lot of tables. The orphanage had tables, long ones, institutional, food distributed in portions that were calibrated to cost rather than appetite. The Lu family had a dining room with the kind of furniture that communicated status more than comfort, and I'd eaten at the corner of it for 3 years without anyone speaking to me directly during a meal. Zhang Zuozong's table had 10 dishes. Bai Jing, who opened the door and said welcome like she meant it, who had spoken to me on the phone over the past few days and apparently said something good to her husband, had made them herself. Not a delivery service, not a cook, her. She seated me, asked if anything was too spicy, passed dishes toward me before I could reach. Zhang Zuozong broke out a bottle of something old and pulled a 3rd glass. He poured, and then he explained how to drink it. Press the tongue down, let it flow through the middle and back. Taste all the layers before you swallow. Like life, he said. Sweet, bitter, and sour. But the combination is what makes it worthwhile. Yeru complained her father always turned wine lessons into philosophy. Bai Jing told her to let him have the one thing he takes seriously at dinner. Zuozong laughed. It went like that. I sat at that table and felt something I'm going to call envy, because I don't have a better word for it. A sharp pull towards something I'd never had. Not jealousy of them specifically, more like grief for the version of my childhood where this was normal. I formally took Zhang Zuozong as master 3 days later. 9 bows. Tea offered to him and to Bai Jing both. He'd insisted she receive tea too, which I understood immediately. She was part of the arrangement. He said, "You are my first disciple, and barring any unforeseen circumstances, my last. From today, I'm not just your teacher, I'm your father." My throat tightened. I got through the ceremony without embarrassing myself. Yoru tried to maneuver the proceedings so that MC had to acknowledge her as senior sister, a title she apparently wanted on the grounds that she was technically studying under her father, and therefore preceded me. I pointed out the relevant technicality. She made an expression that suggested this wasn't over. Zuozong gave me the 6th tempering booklet with his own handwriting in the margins. His father's notes, he explained, passed down with corrections added across 2 generations. The 6th tempering is not like the others. The first 5 worked through purification of the physical medium, qi and blood scrubbed cleaner with each pass, like clarifying something muddy until it runs clear. 6th requires something different, identifying and expelling spiritual impurities, the accumulated emotional residue that settles into qi and blood over a lifetime. Pride, envy, anger, resentment, grief. I sat in meditation for 4 hours on the first attempt and couldn't get there. My mind was a sea in a storm. Every thought I tried to release generated 3 more. Faces, scenes. I'd never understood how to make it quiet. I'd only ever known how to make it useful. Zuozong found me after dinner, still sitting, still failing. He sat down across from me and offered the metaphor. A chaotic sea needs an anchor, something strong enough to hold the ship steady. It could be a person, a landscape, a memory, anything, but it had to be mine. I didn't tell him what I chose. The moon from my past life. The one I'd watched for years as a soul with no body, untethered from everything. No family, no ambition, no grief, just the long, cold light of it. The moment I settled my mind onto that image, the storm slowed. The thoughts stopped generating. I breathed. When I came out of it, I didn't understand why my breathing had changed. Zuozong had gone very still in the garden. He told me later that I'd been using the moon breathing technique, a closely guarded method that normally took cultivators years to even approach. I'd done it accidentally on my first entry into meditation. He'd dropped his shears and clipped one of the flowers while processing this information. The impurities were harder. I spent a full day and a night moving through the meditative state, searching. The booklet described them as threads thin as hair, embedded in the qi and blood, visible to cultivators with sufficient spiritual sensitivity. I could feel things. I just couldn't find them. At dinner on the second night, Bai Jing noticed I looked exhausted and said, "Stop calling me madam. I'm your mother now." Simple sentence. Said without ceremony while she was passing the soup. What it did to me was not simple. I went very still. The part of me that had been holding the Lu family's ghost at arm's length, the practiced detachment, the deliberate refusal to want anything from adults who claimed to care, felt it. Not a crack, a collapse. The image of Lin Shuya with the rattan cane, the storage room with the ceiling crack, the 3 years of being called an orphan by the school records while I lived in a house with my own parents. And now this, a woman handing me soup and calling herself my mother without asking for anything in return. I made a decision at that table. I'd been carrying the old family as a weight I couldn't set down. I didn't need to forgive them. I didn't need to resolve anything. I just needed to stop letting them occupy the space where something real was being offered. I stayed at the table for 3 hours after the meal. We talked. Yueru told stories about the academy that were funnier than they should have been. Bai Jing kept refilling my tea. Zuozong kept inserting observations no one asked for that turned out to be correct. It was the loudest dinner table I'd ever sat at. The next morning, I found the impurities. I'd been trying to search for them in a state of calm. The technique I came up with was different. Make yourself angry first, then look. Use the anger as a lantern rather than a fog. I sat down, closed my eyes, and thought about the Lu family systematically. The rattan cane, the storage room, the assembly outside the exam center, where every choice I made proved I had value, and every result was claimed by people who hadn't been in the room. Lu Gentian's flat eyes, the day he told me I'd amount to nothing. The anger came, and in the anger, I saw them, thin as hair, threaded through my qi and blood like cracks in glass. Spiritual impurities, exactly as described. I began the slow work of removal. It took nearly a month. During that month, Yueru challenged me to a balanced scooter tour of campus and watched me fail. I'd damaged one of Lu Jin's hoverboards years ago and been beaten for it. The body remembered. She laughed and called me all brawn and no brains. The word wisdom made me check my panel. Wisdom, 5. Every point I'd allocated since rebirth had gone toward physical stats. Strength, agility, constitution, the things you need to survive immediate threats. Wisdom was a luxury I hadn't afforded myself. I left her mid-tour and ran back to my room. 6 demon yuan into wisdom, a sharp pain behind my eyes, then clarity, then photographic memory, reading a medical textbook cover to cover, each page stored with perfect fidelity, not just remembered, contained, accessible. Yueru arrived at my room furious about being abandoned mid-outing. I explained what I'd been doing. Her expression went through several phases before settling on something I recognized as embarrassed. After the 6th tempering completed, I asked Zuozong to take me monster hunting. He agreed. Then he grabbed me around the waist and launched us both into the sky at full shuttle speed with no warning. I'll note for the record that I did not handle it with composure. We came down half a kilometer outside the academy walls. My face apparently told a story he found amusing. He said he always wanted to see me surprised at something. He'd been waiting for the right moment. We hunted together for the afternoon. He explained the distribution, 1st to 3rd order within 20 kilometers, higher ranks beyond that, 5th rank demons that could speak and reason, 8th rank demon kings, 9th rank demon emperors. The academies specifically exist to push back. He moved through the tree line with the particular economy of motion that separates someone who knows how to fight from someone who has never needed not to. I watched him and understood that the gentle middle-aged man at the dinner table and the 8th rank venerable were the same person wearing the same face. I killed 10 beasts, precise, efficient, exactly enough. Back at the house, I added the demon essence. Wisdom climbed to 20. A new entry appeared on the panel, absolute focus, level 1. I opened the medical book and activated it. The room went quiet. Not literally. I mean, my mind stopped registering it. There was only the page. The text moved through me with an efficiency I hadn't experienced even at Wisdom 12. Pages turned automatically. Information settled without effort. It was like breathing, but for knowledge. Then it ended, and I sat on the floor because my legs weren't reliable. It cost something, the skill. The dizziness passed in a few minutes. The emptiness took longer. The experience counter read 100. I wrote the number down and thought about what it would mean at 100. Outside, I could hear Yueru complaining to her mother about something. Bai Jing's response was patient. Zuozong's contribution was a single comment that made both of them laugh. I sat on the floor with the dizziness fading and the counter at 100 and thought, this is good. This is actually good. I'd never been sure of that about a place before. Agility reached 20 in the garden behind the Zhang house, 3 weeks before school started. The skill unlocked instantly. Bullet time, level 1. I tested it. The world slowed. Not figuratively, literally. The wind stopped moving the grass. A bird crossing the sky appeared to hover. Everything in my visual field stretched into long, patient clarity. I could feel my own pulse between my thoughts. Then the skill ended, and my muscles tried to leave my body. I don't know a more accurate description. The muscle tearing that comes with bullet time is different from the body pain of stat allocation. This was specific and violent. Every fiber that had been working at superhuman load, trying to account for the sudden return to normal time. I was on the ground before I understood why. Yueru found me 20 minutes later. She ran through several stages of reaction very quickly. Alarmed, demanding, suspicious. I told her I'd been training and took a hit from a misaligned technique. She pressed on my arm so hard I thought she was doing it on purpose. I healed using constitution points while her back was briefly turned and presented her with a mysteriously recovered shoulder as evidence. She looked at me the way she looks when she knows a story doesn't add up and is cataloging it for later. The 7th tempering was done within the week. Absolute focus made the final approach possible. The emotional lantern method, amplifying anger to illuminate the remaining impurities, worked again on the thinner, harder threads that standard 6th tempering techniques leave behind. By now, I knew the feeling well enough to work at it with precision rather than force. I told Zuozong over breakfast. He put his teacup down and it bounced off the saucer because his hand wasn't quite steady. Bai Jing looked between us. Yueru looked up from her food. The 7th, he said. Not a question. He wanted confirmation. Yes. He stood up, sat back down, then stood up again and went to the cabinet where he kept the good bottles. He came back with 3. Genius, he said. Not to flatter, but in the specific tone of a man who's spent decades in a field and can recognize a thing that doesn't normally exist. My disciple. I said you were a true genius, and I meant it generally. I didn't know I meant it like this. We drank. 3 bottles in, Bai Jing tried to take the 3rd away, and Zuozong and I both held on to it. Yueru found this extremely funny. We drank the 3rd. At some point, somewhere in the warmth of 3 bottles and a fire that someone had lit without me noticing, I said, could I live in the dormitory? Sober the next morning, I confirmed it. I explained my reasoning. Being the dean's apprentice made me a target for special treatment, which cuts both ways. Protection I didn't need and attention I didn't want. The dormitory put me in the actual social environment where threats and opportunities actually lived. It was also more honest to what I wanted, an ordinary experience. Whatever happened afterward, I at least wanted to have had that. Zuozong listened. He understood. He said the secret wouldn't last forever. I said, I know. After all, my future is destined to be extraordinary regardless. He gave me a look that was both a father's pride and a teacher's amusement, which is a particular combination. Bai Jing packed me new bedding. She packed it systematically and labeled everything, and added a second set because the first set she packed wasn't good enough once she looked at it again. Yueru arrived in a pink outfit that she'd apparently put thought into and announced she was walking me to registration. She did not frame this as optional. Registration was an outdoor setup in the campus central square. Long tables, student volunteers, lines by department. We were navigating toward the martial arts faculty table when a young man stepped directly into Yueru's path. Not stumbling, not accidental, deliberate. He was a sophomore from the look of him, good-looking in the polished way of people who've been told about it often, and he addressed her by name in the specific tone of someone who believes familiarity is already established. His name, I learned later, was Jiwen. His father ran the academic affairs department. He was clearly accustomed to those two facts opening most doors. Yueru's expression changed. I stepped between them and pushed him aside. Not with particular force, just enough to move him several meters and create a clear distinction between his position and ours. He stumbled. He said something loud. I walked Yueru to the registration table, held her hand the remaining distance because she'd reached out, and I didn't let go, finished the paperwork, and left. Jiwen was still talking. I didn't acknowledge it. His exact words on the way out. Your name is Lu Sheng, right? Don't get too cocky. There's plenty of time in college. I'll have plenty of time to play with you slowly. I noted the name Ziwen and the fact that he'd had time to ask around for mine. Before I'd finished unpacking in room 401 of Building 63, Ziwen had found a partner. His name was Lu Mingfei, junior year, one of those campus figures who appears in every department's social circle without anyone thinking to ask why. Handsome, easy with people, 3 days from reaching 4th rank. He sought Ziwen out at the registration desk and asked about the freshman from earlier, the one who'd caused the scene with Zhang Yueru. Then he told Ziwen, that's not a friend. That's an enemy. Lu Gaofeng's son, Lu Gentian's proxy. The instructions he was carrying to Cambrian weren't general. They specified MC, cripple him if possible. At minimum, ensure he couldn't cultivate in peace. 3 million yuan of Lu Gaofeng's debt, forgiven on delivery. I didn't know any of this while I was sitting on the dorm bed, testing whether one tempered fingertip could dent iron. It could. The bed frame took a visible dent. I noted that at the current pace, 1 fingertip per 2 hours, full immortal bone completion would take considerable time. It wouldn't affect combat power, just the long-term ceiling. I could manage around it. The 3 major academies had halved Cambrian's resource allocation in response to my public rejections. I found out because Zuozong and Bai Jing were arguing about it late at night in the kitchen, and I was nearby washing dishes with enhanced hearing. They weren't arguing exactly, they were managing. Zuozong had promised something he wasn't sure he could deliver, and Bai Jing was running numbers that didn't work. I finished the dishes and waited in the hallway until morning. I gave Zuozong the bottle at breakfast, the advanced type 2 Qi and blood enhancement potion, one of the items from Liu Qingwen's secret room, worth 60 million yuan on any market. He held it and looked at me. My family sent it as compensation, I said, for everything that happened. They felt responsible for the academy being targeted because of me. He looked at the bottle, then at me. The Lu family was broke and scattered. This particular kind of compensation from that particular kind of family didn't quite add up, and Zuozong was not a man who missed things. He said thank you and put the bottle down and didn't press. I noted the absence of pressure and filed it. First day of class. I arrived early and took a seat mid-row. The room filled. Most people didn't look at me specifically. A girl with a round face and a bun hairstyle sat down beside me and stared at my profile with an intensity that suggested she was trying to remember something or making herself remember something she'd deliberately suppressed. She introduced herself as Tang Jiao Jiao, 3rd ranked in the exam. Bright, competitive, very direct. Then, she told me she was my first match at the entrance exam. I reviewed the enrollment phase fights in my memory, several faces. The girl who wore the "you punched me in the stomach," she said. I was unconscious for an hour. I missed the B-level window because I was still on the floor. I ended up at Cambrian because of you. I looked at her. I'm sorry, I said. She stared at me for a moment. I would have been gentler, she said slowly, if I'd known you were going to be my classmate. Our teacher, Zhu Lingwei, arrived before I could process the math on that sentence. She was a combat veteran, short hair, camouflage outfit, the particular economy of movement that comes from years of fighting things that don't negotiate. She listed class officers based on exam scores. Zheng Ruilong as monitor, Kang Zhuang as vice, Tang Jiao as study committee. My name didn't come up. I was ranked in the middle by Zuozong's deliberate arrangement. Tang Jiao leaned over. You're really mid-rank? For now, I said. She looked like she didn't believe me, which meant she was paying attention. 3 days in, Zhu Lingwei announced the week's practical training, monster killing, mandatory. The breeding base on the east side of campus had caged first-tier demons, ghost-faced cats, specifically, hind limbs deliberately broken to limit mobility. The students would go one by one and face them. Half the class looked at the handout. The other half looked at the floor. We went. The breeding base smelled like every animal facility that has ever existed. The cats were in iron cages, black fur, dark green patterns, flat, ugly faces that lived up to the name. Even with broken hind limbs, they moved with the front half of their bodies in a way that made clear the toxin in their claws and teeth was still fully operational. Zhu Lingwei called names in order. Lu Xianling took the sword, walked 3 steps toward the cage, turned around when the cat charged, dropped the sword, and ran. He cleared the gate before the cat reached him. Zheng Ruilong, the current class monitor. He stood at the line for 45 seconds and refused to cross it. Not dramatically, just would not move his feet. Kang Zhuang made it to the cage, looked through the bars, went pale, stepped back. Tang Jiao was standing behind me with both hands wrapped around my arm, very close, watching all of this. I felt her fingers tighten. I'm sorry, Lu Sheng, she said, very quietly and very close. Consider this the interest on the punch you threw at me. She pushed. I was in the middle of the open space before I registered what happened. Every head in the class turned. Zhu Lingwei looked at me with an expression that read as, finally, a volunteer. I walked to the weapon rack and took a knife, not a sword. The knife I was comfortable with. The black one was in my room, but any knife would do. The ghost-faced cat watched me approach from inside the cage. It had the intelligence of something that understood the difference between people who feared it and people who didn't. It processed me, recalibrated, and charged the moment the cage was opened. I accelerated into it and swept the blade horizontal, single stroke, clean. The body continued forward a step on momentum and lay down. The room was quiet enough that I could hear the other caged cats shifting in their pens. Zhu Lingwei stood with her hands behind her back. The corner of her mouth was slightly up. 10 participation points, she said. Next student. She called me aside after class. She asked about my monster killing experience. I said occasional practice. She said, not occasional. The way I moved suggested hundreds of kills. Someone who's killed hundreds of monsters moves differently from someone who's killed 1 or 10. She'd seen it enough times to know. I told her I'd killed quite a few in the time before school started. She offered me the class monitor position. She explained what she needed. Someone calm under pressure. Someone who led by demonstrating rather than declaring. She used the phrase alpha wolf with the seriousness of someone who'd thought about it and not found a better phrase. I asked 2 questions. Could I help kill monsters during practical lessons when students were in danger? Deliver the finishing blow if someone couldn't? Could we have at least 3 practical sessions per week? She said yes to both. I said yes. The calculation was simple. Every wounded monster I finished was demon essence the class couldn't collect themselves. 3 times a week minimum. That was a sustainable supply. Legitimate. Covered by my official role. The classmates who'd been watching from a distance came over after the announcement. Boys mostly, wanting tips, wanting to know how I'd moved that fast, wanting to get better. They dragged me to dinner. Someone's roommate had access to something drinkable. We sat in the cafeteria for 2 hours. Zheng Ruilong and Kang Zhuang left early without speaking. I noted that too. Resentment is energy. It goes somewhere eventually. From the corner of the cafeteria, Tang Jiao watched me across 3 tables, nursing a drink, with an expression I couldn't classify. Not hostile, not warm, something that was still making up its mind. I'd knocked her to her knees at the entrance exam and didn't remember her face. She'd pushed me into the line that made me a class monitor. Whatever was between us, the ledger wasn't clear yet. I was fairly certain she'd find a way to keep score. The knock came after 11, 3 of them standing in the hallway outside my dorm. Student council windbreakers, the kind of institutional uniform that's supposed to communicate authority. Room check, the short one said. Spot inspection, standard procedure. I looked at them. 3 rooms down the hall, lights were still on. Upstairs, someone's music was audible. They weren't knocking on any of those doors. Does the school have a rule against drinking alcohol? I said. The short one didn't like that. His tone changed. He mentioned scholarships, cultivation resources, how easily they could disappear with the right word to the right people. He was cataloging leverage the way people do when they found it usually works. Oh, I said. "Go and report it then." He shoved me. What happened next was fast enough that I suspect the people watching from down the hall didn't see most of it. The short one's wrist came off course before his punch landed. He met my foot at the end of a kick that covered the relevant distance. The other two came in together. Always a mistake, because pairs in a hallway interfere with each other, and I had approximately 3 seconds with the first one before the second arrived. Neither of them got what they came for. All three were in the hallway, looking considerably different than when they'd arrived. When the dorm supervisor appeared at the stairwell, she looked at them. She looked at me. She told everyone to follow her to the security office. I noted the hall cameras on the way out. Director He Chung-gung was a fair-minded man trying to do his job inside a system that regularly complicated that. He reviewed the footage with the patient expression of someone who'd hoped the evidence might be ambiguous and discovered it wasn't. 3 student council members approaching specifically my room, banging on the door. The short one's shove, visible and unambiguous on 2 separate camera angles. MC's response, immediate, efficient, proportionate. Self-defense was the only accurate description. He was explaining this conclusion when Jie Wen appeared in the doorway. He had the slightly disheveled look of someone who'd been called away from something, and the particular confidence of someone who expects a family name to solve the problem. He mentioned his father, the head of academic affairs. He made a reference to what his father could do for director, his continued career comfort. He Chung-gung's expression didn't change, but something around his eyes did. Then, Zhu Lingwei walked in. She looked at me first. Did they win or lose? We won, I said. She looked at the 3 beaten students. She looked at Jie Wen. She said, "So you're the legendary spoiled brat." Ziwen told her to show some respect. She moved. I didn't see it clearly. I was watching Ziwen's face, which was the better location for the information. One moment, he was standing. The next, he was across the room with furniture scattered around him, sitting on the floor with a handprint on his face, blinking. "The person who hit you," she said, "is named Zhu Lingwei. Remember it." In the monitoring room, He Chung-gung showed Zhu Lingwei the footage from the hallway. She watched it without speaking. She asked one question, whether MC had used vital energy, and He Chung-gung confirmed, no, pure physical ability. 3 near second rank students dismantled without a single kui expenditure. She looked at me differently after that. Ji Wen called his father from outside the building. I know this because Ziwen's conversation carried, and because he was crying, which tends to raise the volume. He told Xie Yan, head of academic affairs, a man accustomed to his son's name opening things, that a teacher had hit him. He said the teacher's name. The sound of Xie Yan's response from a phone 2 meters away was audible through the wall. The short version, Xie Yan told his son that if Zhu Lingwei had beaten him to death in that room, his father still couldn't have done anything about it. He told him to apologize immediately. He threatened to cut off his allowance entirely if he caused any more trouble. Xie Wen came back inside. He stood in front of Zhu Lingwei and apologized. The words were grammatically correct and emotionally hollow, which I think was the most he could manage. She told him that an apology wasn't all it took after abusing his position to bully freshmen. She said this while already walking toward the door. He stood there, having apologized to no effect and been dismissed without acknowledgement, with a handprint on his face and his father's fear in his ears. The next morning, Zhu Lingwei announced the new class monitor. Zheng Ruilong made the mistake of objecting out loud. He listed his exam score, his standing, his claim to the position. He said he'd been afraid of the monster, and that was natural for a first encounter, and he would improve. Zhu Lingwei considered this for a moment. Then she said, "You want a chance? Beat Lu Sheng. Keep the position if you win." Zheng Ruilong heard this as encouragement. He heard it as a teacher creating the conditions for him to demonstrate his worth. He had 100 and something points over my registered exam score and a full year of structured training behind him. He lunged. I dropped and put a hook into his abdomen. He was on the floor making sounds I won't describe. I waited to see if he was done. He appeared to be done. I looked at Zhu Lingwei. "Oh," I said. She put me in front of the class the next session. "Teach them," she said, "how to fight monsters, how to think in front of something trying to kill them." The theory was short. Stay calm, observe the pattern, find the gap. Every monster has a tell, a preparation motion before an attack, a vulnerability in the follow-through. The goal isn't strength, the goal is reading. For the practical demonstration, I chose Tang Jiaojiao. She'd pushed me into the ghost-faced cat ring. She'd called it the interest on the punch I owed her. I considered this an establishment of a ledger, and ledgers go both ways. The python was large, as thick as an adult's thigh, covered in spines that had a specific opinion about anything touching them. Tang Jiaojiao went pale when she saw it. I gave her a knife and told her to focus. She went through several phases: terror, denial, forced engagement. She spent about a minute circling the thing, and I watched her eyes stop reacting and start reading. The python telegraphs from the neck, a slight coil before the strike, a tilt of the head. She saw it. She timed it. When it lunged, she went sideways and put the blade into the belly. The python made a sound. Tang Jiao Jiao jumped back and started to turn to the class, arms going up. The bisected rear half of the python flexed toward her. I was already moving. Multiple cuts. Done. Tang Jiao Jiao, I said. Are you an idiot? The kill isn't confirmed until it stops moving. Don't ever turn your back on it. She stood there absorbing this. Her arms came down. However, I said, your performance was commendable. I'd give you a 70. Her face changed entirely. Really? I went on to the next student. The video appeared on the school forum during lunch. Shocking. The strongest freshman appears, taking on 3 sophomores and beating them up. Clear angles, clear identification, clear outcome. 3 near second ranked sophomores and 1 unranked freshman with registered C-level scores from enrollment. Class 12 erupted. They crowded around phones in the cafeteria, like people watching something they couldn't believe was real. Some of them pulled it back to the moment of contact and watched it frame by frame. Zheng Rulong watched it at a separate table. He watched it once, and then again. Then, he leaned over to Kang Zhuang and told him to stop causing trouble. There was nothing to gain. Tang Jiao Jiao, from somewhere across the room, stared at me with the expression of someone recalculating a significant number of assumptions. He's actually that good, she said to no one in particular. Then, I really held back when I threw that punch. I addressed the class after the practical session. Don't cause trouble. Fighting is not the goal. Cultivation is. But if anyone bullies you, you don't back down. You handle it. And if it's something you can't handle, you bring it to Teacher Zhu or to me. Zhu Lingwei added, anyone who causes trouble deliberately shouldn't expect help. But anyone who bullies her students, regardless of who they are, she would not stand for it. The class was very still when we finished. Not nervous. The other kind of still. The kind that comes when people feel like something has their back. In another room at the same time, Zi Wen was meeting with Lu Mingfei. He was worried. MC's viral fame was making him untouchable in a way that direct attacks couldn't overcome. Every move against him had failed and left Zi Wen looking worse. He said, at this rate, the kid's going to be a campus star. Lu Mingfei smiled. That was fine, he said. That was the plan. He explained the strategy calmly, with the particular patience of someone who doesn't need the other person to like the plan, just to implement it. Inflate MC's reputation. Call him the strongest freshman in history. Claim he surpasses all sophomores. Put his name on every forum post, every comparison thread, every who would win discussion. In martial arts, there is no second place. Every ambitious student on campus would hear the title strongest freshman and immediately want to be the one who ended it. The sophomores, whose collective pride had just taken a public hit from a freshman with a C-level registration score, would line up. Zi Wen understood. He said, you're praising him to death. Lu Mingfei said, the tallest tree in the forest is always the first one felled by the wind. 3 floors up, in a different building, Zhang Guiru was being shown the forum video by her roommate. She watched it once. She sat up straight. The roommate said something about the strongest freshman, about the dorm fight, about how everyone was talking about this mystery first-year student with the impossible speed. Yueru looked at the frozen frame, at the posture, at the specific way the figure held the left shoulder while moving. She knew that shoulder. She put down the phone and said she needed to make a call. Across campus, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen, looked at the training schedule posted on the wall, and decided I'd call back after the afternoon practical class. Whatever she wanted to say, it could wait 1 hour. It couldn't, as it turned out. But I didn't know that yet. The forum post had been up for 18 hours when Yueru dragged me away from the cafeteria line by the arm. She pulled me to a corner table and showed me her phone. Comments in the hundreds, most of them threats. A few were creative about it. She scrolled with the controlled urgency of someone presenting a fire that's already burned down 3 buildings. You need to keep a low profile, she said. I know. You're not taking this seriously. I'm taking it seriously. I just don't think it changes anything. She looked at me for a moment. How are you not scared right now? I thought about what to say that wasn't a full explanation of my stat panel and past life martial knowledge. I said, the gap between me and ordinary students is larger than it looks from outside the gap. She appeared to find this more alarming than reassuring. We ate together, her food, then mine, then the remainder of hers, because she'd stopped eating and I was still hungry. She noticed. She said nothing, but something in her expression went somewhere I didn't follow. She told me about the field operations department as a way of not saying whatever she was thinking. Off-campus hunting access, monster areas within range of the academy. I thanked her for the information and went to apply. Yuan Lang at the field operations desk was a man who'd clearly just heard about the strongest freshman post and was already applying it. He gave me an assessment assignment with the particular patience of someone setting a trap, kill a second-tier monster, bare-handed. He said this shouldn't be too difficult for the strongest freshman. I looked at him. He met my eyes with professional neutrality. I said, "Understood. When does it start?" He told me the date. After I left, I could hear him telling the assistant, "New ping," something. I caught the words, "thick-armored ape." I kept walking. A second-tier thick-armored ape bare-handed was a challenge even a trained second-rank martial artist would struggle with. The trap was obvious. The trap was also, practically speaking, solvable, which meant it was still worth accepting. I filed it and went back to my dorm. By the time I arrived at class the next morning, there were 30-odd freshmen and a few seniors standing outside the hallway arguing with my classmates about whether I was home. Zheng Ruilong was in the middle of it. This was unexpected. He was defending me, loudly and with some heat, citing my performance at the arena and what I'd done with the snake training, telling the challengers they had no idea what they were asking for. He and I had fought less than 2 weeks ago. He'd vomited on the floor, and I'd said "oh" to his defeat. People are unpredictable. I stepped between the groups. The noise dropped. "I heard you want to challenge me," I said, "but one condition first, 1,000 yuan registration fee." Complete silence. Then several people at once started talking, which is usually what silence costs. I looked at Tang Jiao Jiao. She took out her phone. The first wave was 52 people at 1,000 yuan each. Tang Jiao Jiao deposited the transfer confirmations, with her eyes a little wide. I told her I'd accept challenges over several days, not all at once. She appeared to find this genuinely relieving. Then, I opened the school forum during a theory class. Wisdom 20 meant I could absorb the lecture and run 3 other tasks simultaneously without conflict, and posted, "Everyone online hurling threats and insults. Is that all you are? You all talk and no action. Freshmen around here are really weak." The replies hit 500 before the class ended. Tang Jiao Jiao checked the payment app from the seat next to me and went very still. "How much?" I said, not looking up from the lecture notes. 193,000, she said, "and it's still going up." I kept writing notes. She stared at the number with an expression I'd classify as traumatized. The class formed a support team without anyone asking me. Tang Jiao Jiao organized it with the efficiency of someone channeling anxiety into logistics. They had flags, signs, a drum that someone had borrowed from somewhere unspecified, a megaphone. They created a group chat and invited everyone except Zhu Lingwei, which I heard about afterward as a detail that lodged in her small notebook, besides several other items I'd apparently contributed. Zhang Weru arrived at the arena with a medical kit. She'd brought bandages, antiseptics, and 3 items that required some optimism about the kinds of injuries she expected. She set up at the cage edge with the patient competence of a person who planned to be there for a while. Tang Jiao Jiao was already hoarse from warm-up cheering. Xie Wen and Lu Mingfei were somewhere in the crowd. I didn't need to find them. I could tell from the particular quality of the silence near certain sections of the stands. The referee was a compact man in his 40s, with the body of someone who'd been doing real combat for 20 years. He confirmed with me, voluntary participation, understanding of the challenge format, no objections to the scale. I told him no objections. Zhu Lingwei found me before I entered the cage. She said, "If you win impressively today, that's fine. If you lose badly, don't blame her for going all out when she deals with you afterward." "Okay," I said. She studied my face for a moment, looking for something. The first challenger was named Fang Huailiang, 1.9 meters, broad-shouldered, lower limbs tempered first, an unusual choice that signals specific combat priorities. He announced his training history to the crowd with the confidence of someone who expected this to be the last thing he needed to say. From the cage edge, "Lu Sheng, watch your step please." Also from the cage edge, louder, "Lu Sheng, show no mercy, kill him." I looked between Weru and Tang Jiao Jiao. They were facing each other. Fang Huailiang attacked. I blocked with my left arm. The arm I'd been tempering for weeks. Bones denser than steel, harder than anything Fang Huailiang's lower limbs had encountered in training. His shin bone met it and produced a sound that the front rows apparently heard clearly. He made a different sound after that. He conceded. I was told later there was a coin-sized dent in the bone. The crowd went through 2 phases. The first was, did that actually just happen? And the second was the video wasn't staged. After the 10th opponent, I asked the referee if I could fight 2 at once. The referee confirmed it. The challengers confirmed they found this offensive. There was some cage shaking. The referee used something called a lion's roar, a concentrated sound technique that hit the crowd like a physical pressure wave and caused approximately 8 people in the front rows to sit down immediately. Zhu Lingwei explained to my classmates afterward that this was a fraction of its actual output. I noted it for future reference. The 1v2 matches proceeded. The crowd's reaction went through cycles. Outrage when I won the first one quickly. Renewed faith in the challengers when 2 came in. outrage again when it made no difference. A pattern of emotions recycling every 3 minutes while I stood in the cage doing what I was doing and thinking about whether my bone tempering in the remaining right hand would be finished before the weekend. Tang Jiao Jiao was chanting through the megaphone with declining lung function. After the 5th 1v2, I asked for 5 at once. The 5 entered together with expressions that suggested they'd talked beforehand. They spread into a half circle, standard formation for group combat. Maximize angles, force the center fighter to commit direction. The person in the center is the anchor. You attack the anchor from multiple angles while keeping your own spacing. I went right, hard, first. The anchor left position expects you to hesitate or commit straight at the center. Going right with acceleration broke the formation's internal geometry before they'd taken 2 steps. The leftmost man took a punch to the liver region, the kind of punch that communicates to the body that serious harm has occurred, bypassing the mind's ability to disagree, and went down. 2 went behind me. 3 remained in front. I took the hits from behind. This part concerned the crowd more than it concerned me. The impacts were real. They were hitting me with real force, real anger, real training. What they didn't account for was that my spine and shoulders at the current tempering stage had more in common with dense hardwood than with human tissue. The hits registered. I simply didn't register them as significant. I turned around. The 2 behind me had a moment to consider the implications of what they'd just watched. A person absorbed 12 strikes to the head and back without reacting, and then I helped them to the floor. The remaining 3 managed some additional effort before the same outcome. The referee counted to 5. Under a minute, Class 12 made a significant amount of noise. Tang Jiao Jiao fell off her stool at some point and apparently hurt herself, but was still chanting from the floor. The referee called the next round, 5 names. Loud, clear into the arena. Silence. He called again. Same names. Nothing. He asked specifically, was Zhou Gang present? A voice from somewhere in the crowd said yes. An expectant pause. Zhou Gang did not move. Someone nearby called him a coward. Zhou Gang appeared to weigh this against the alternative. The arena had been half full of people who'd paid 1,000 yuan each and traveled here specifically to fight me. They'd watched the 1v2 matches. They'd watched the 1v5. They'd watched 12 punches to the back produce no discernible damage. Not one of them stepped forward. The silence had a particular quality, not the silence of a surprised crowd or a crowd waiting for something. The silence of several hundred people making the same quiet calculation simultaneously and arriving at the same result. Zhu Lingwei, somewhere in the seats, was writing in her notebook. I stood in the center of the cage and waited for the next challenger, who didn't come. The referee looked at me. I looked at the crowd. The money, 193,000 yuan collected since yesterday, was in Tang Jiao Jiao's management. I'd fought through one evening and accomplished what I needed to accomplish. I nodded to the referee and stepped out of the cage. Behind me, Class 12 erupted again. Yuaru had put down the medical kit, which she hadn't opened once. Across the crowd, in the part of the stands I hadn't looked at directly, I was aware of 2 people sitting with very still expressions. The kind of stillness that happens when a plan has definitively failed, and the person holding it is calculating what to try next. Lu Mingfei would need a different strategy. The tallest tree had been put in a hurricane and hadn't moved. I went back to the dorm and continued the bone tempering. There were still fingers to finish. The remaining challengers were still standing there, not fighting, just standing, refusing to enter, which meant I had a problem. 400 people registered, 300 and something left after the 1v5, but none of them were stepping forward, which made the math inefficient. I needed to close this cleanly. 10, I told the referee. He blinked. 10 at once, I said. He started to explain why that wasn't how this worked. Then something came through his earpiece and his expression shifted. He said okay and announced it to the arena. The crowd's reaction moved through 3 phases: disbelief, laughter, and then a slow settling unease as people realized I'd said it without irony. 10 names were called. 10 people entered the cage. They looked at me the way you look at someone standing on the edge of a roof, not sure if they're going to jump or they're just an idiot. I walked to the center of the cage. From every commentator perspective in the stands, this was tactically insane. You don't stand in the middle of 10 opponents. You fight to the edge, use the walls, work the angles. Standing in the center gave everyone equal access to me. Zhu Lingwei, loudly, said it was stupid. Zhang Zuozong, apparently watching from his office on a camera feed, said something similar. Yuaru said nothing. She'd been watching me long enough to know when I had a reason. The 10 challengers spread into the natural formation, semicircle, then full surround. The referee called start. They charged. I activated bullet time. The world stopped. Not completely. They were still moving, technically, but at the speed of someone walking very slowly through deep water while I was operating at normal function. I could see each face, see each trajectory. A man on my left, with his right shoulder leading, overcommitted, going to miss. One directly ahead, maintaining better form, targeting my sternum. I moved through them, one punch per person. Target selection, abdomen, sternum, solar plexus, disabling, not injuring. I had 2 seconds of real-world time and 10 people, and the geometry worked because I'd put myself at the center on purpose. Everyone equidistant, no running required. Deactivation. 2 seconds passed. 10 people arrived at the place I'd been standing and found me already behind them, back in the center. For about a quarter second, the arena was completely silent. Then, all 10 flew backward into the cage walls simultaneously. Delayed, their bodies hadn't understood yet what had happened, processing the hits on a half-second delay. Then, I screamed. The pain was not metaphorical. The muscles in my right arm were tearing. Not the good pain of growth, the specific agony of fiber separation, the body's feedback that it had been asked to do something it wasn't built for yet. My physique stat dropped from 17 to 16 in real time, and I felt every fractional point of it. I added demon essence to constitution immediately, standing in the center of the cage with my jaw locked, and the relief arrived in waves as the system repaired what bullet time had broken. 30 seconds. My breathing steadied. The pain moved from unbearable to significant to manageable. I opened my eyes. The cage was full of people on the floor. The stands were silent. I walked to the edge and looked at the remaining challengers. No one moved. The referee called names. Nothing. He called them again. A voice somewhere in the crowd asked someone else why they weren't stepping forward. That someone else didn't answer. Hundreds of people, every one of them had paid 1,000 yuan and traveled to the arena specifically to fight me. Not one of them entered the cage. Tang Jiaojiao started the chant. Lu Sheng, Lu Sheng, Lu Sheng. Her voice was already hoarse from the afternoon. It didn't matter. Her classmates picked it up. The crowd picked it up. Even some of the people who'd come to beat me were chanting. The sound built in the arena like something with its own mass. I stood in the cage and heard it and felt something I didn't have good vocabulary for. Gao Zhen shook my hand after the official close. He said, one of the most exciting matches he'd ever hosted. He told me they'd meet again soon, with the tone of someone who's made a decision. I thanked him and stepped off the stage. Both arms were grabbed at exactly the same moment. Yueru had my left. Tang Jiaojiao had my right wrist. They'd reached simultaneously from opposite sides, and the collision of this fact registered on both their faces at the exact same instant. Tang Jiaojiao's celebration smile went very still. Yueru's expression tightened. She raised her chin slightly, the particular posture of someone asserting position without speaking. The two of them looked at each other across my body. I have described combat between trained martial artists. What happened in that 3-second eye contact was different, and I lacked the right framework for it. Classmates rushed in from all directions to congratulate me, breaking the standoff. I extracted both arms and thanked the class properly. Tang Jiaojiao had apparently organized the entire operation, the megaphone, the flags, the drumming, the 100-and-something voices chanting my name while I stood in a cage. I'd spent years being invisible in a house full of people. Something about this felt like the inverse of that, and I let myself notice it. Later, Yueru found Tang Jiaojiao and told her something I wasn't supposed to hear, but my hearing is good. She said her relationship with me was more than classmates, and she knew me very well, and if Tang Jiaojiao had any ulterior motives, she should give them up. Tang Jiaojiao puffed out her chest and said, she was my deskmate and work partner. They spent every day together, and those who are near the water get the moon first. Yueru said, let's wait and see. I went to find the class monitor duties I'd apparently neglected by spending the afternoon in a cage. I invited the class to a late-night barbecue. 10,000 yen upfront. Everyone came. Zhu Lingwei appeared at the restaurant and announced additional private training sessions for me. She said this with the authority of someone who didn't expect a discussion. Yueru objected, with the particular directness of someone who's been waiting for a reason. The tension between them was briefly real. Two people of different rank, both convinced they were right about how to handle my training. Then, Zhu Lingwei mentioned her master's name, Zhang Zuozong. Yueru's expression went through several things very quickly. Zhu Lingwei said, flood washes away the Dragon King's temple. They were on the same side, and apparently this was her uncle's idea. The private training was arranged by the dean for the college competition. The standoff dissolved. Zhu Lingwei apologized to Yueru with the genuine discomfort of someone who's just realized they nearly fought the boss's daughter. We ate. Yueru picked the fatty meat off my skewers without being asked and set it to the side. She mentioned, in the middle of a conversation about something else, that her mother would be making braised beef with potatoes tomorrow. My favorite, she said, with the casual possessiveness of someone whose mother already knew what I preferred to eat. Across the table, Tang Jiaojiao went very quiet. She stayed quiet for the rest of the meal. Then, she mentioned she didn't feel well and left early. I noticed she didn't look sick. I noticed she looked like someone who'd run a calculation and arrived at a number she hadn't expected. Yueru's roommates told her afterward, with the enthusiastic cruelty of close friends, that her real enemy wasn't Tang Jiaojiao. It was me, my complete and functional inability to perceive romantic interest as romantic. Zhu Lingwei later explained to Yueru why this was the case. She told her about the orphanage and the Lu family, and 3 years of systematic abuse, and a system that granted power at the cost of constant cultivation pressure. She said, someone like that builds walls because walls kept him alive. Romance doesn't register as safe until survival does. She told Yueru that loving someone like MC meant accepting that cultivation would always come first for a long time. Yueru listened to all of it. Then, she said she wasn't giving up. Tang Jiaojiao called her father. Tang Anbang was a man of business and resources, and the particular attention of a parent whose daughter doesn't usually call upset. She told him about the dean's daughter and asked if they could acquire Cambrian Academy. He said, there's a reason you're at Cambrian specifically. Her grandfather's remains were there. She had a chance to inherit a martial saint's legacy through a test the academy held, if she proved worthy. Then, she mentioned my name and the 1v10 fight. He asked her to send the video. He watched it in silence. Then, he said, 10 opponents in under 3 seconds at that age, with that speed and power. He compared it to geniuses from top-ranked academies. He told her, if she was serious about this young man, that was not a conversation to dismiss. He would visit Cambrian himself to look into it. She hung up and stared at the sky for a while. The next morning, I went to the field operations department assessment. Yuan Leng had the eyes of a man who'd heard about the dorm video, didn't believe it was real, and had arranged this test to prove it wasn't. Other students did their assessments with weapons and left with department memberships. When my turn came, Yuan Leng announced the condition: kill a second-tier monster barehanded. The thick-armored ape was large and covered in plated bone armor across its limbs and torso, natural protection that made it nearly impossible to damage without weapons. Yuan Leng said this shouldn't be a problem for the strongest freshman. I looked at him and said, understood. Niu Ping grinned. The ape was released. First punch, 50%. The ape rolled, stood up unharmed, and shook itself off. Good defense. I increased, 70%, targeting the chest during its charge. The bone armor shattered, not cracked, shattered, and something moved through the impact, something the force alone didn't account for, a quality that pushed through the defense and landed on the ape's body as something it clearly felt deeply. My right hand, with the weeks of immortal bone tempering complete, was channeling a force I didn't fully understand yet. The ape understood it. It turned and ran. I caught its calf, and the ape and the cage floor had several introductions after that, until the ape stopped having opinions about anything. Yuan Lang told me I hadn't passed. Minimum standard was first rank. The assessment was always invalid for someone at my level. I looked at him. He smiled. I grabbed him by the collar. He said, "Go ahead, hit me." He cited his student council rank. He said it with the confidence of a man who's used institutional protection before. I hit him. Then Niu Ping came at me from behind, and what followed was a two-person problem I solved, with the same force I'd used on the ape. That strange internal quality that doesn't announce itself, but registers somewhere inside whoever receives it. Niu Ping's face developed opinions about its shape. Yuan Lang came back with qi gathered in his fist, red lit, trained. We exchanged. I moved back 7 steps. He moved back 3 and kept his right hand hidden behind his back. He ran. I stared at this development for a moment and then chased him into the courtyard. Wei Yonggrui arrived from the main building like a man who had received a very specific kind of report. He heard Yuan Lang's version. He heard mine. He walked into the cage, looked at the ape's current condition, and came back out. He slapped Yuan Lang to the floor. Then he slapped Niu Ping to the floor. He said, "You two deserve to be beaten." He said, endangering a freshman's life over petty jealousy. Other students had apparently been looking up the viral video on their phones while this was happening. 4,000 comments now. Someone confirmed to Shui Yonggrui what the fight had actually contained. He called me a monster, which I think was intended as a compliment. Both Yuan Lang and Niu Ping apologized. Niu Ping immediately and with feeling. He was calculating the cost of losing his position. Yuan Lang, with resentment that didn't bother to hide itself. Shui Yonggrui offered compensation and a department invitation. I thanked him for the outcome and declined the department membership. He looked at me. I said, I don't join places that set traps to test me. If the field operations department wanted to evaluate my ability, they could have asked directly. He appeared to find this both frustrating and correct. He let me go. I walked back across campus, thinking about the force from my right hand and what it meant, and when I'd get to ask Zuozong about it. Yuan Lang's eyes, as I left, were the eyes of someone who's told himself this isn't over. I'd seen that look before. It usually led somewhere. I told Zhui Yonggrui there was no need for the compensation. He wanted to offer money and a key blood potion. I asked instead to kill 8 second-tier demons from the department's research enclosures. He looked at me for a moment and agreed. The 8 kills took less than 20 minutes and got me 4 demon essence points, which was worth considerably more than the cash equivalent. Yuan Lang's face, from where he was standing against the far wall under Shui Yonggrui's watchful eye, communicated that he found this personally offensive. I declined the department invitation again on the way out. Not the department itself. Shui Yonggrui seemed like a man worth working with, but Yuan Lang still worked there, and Yuan Lang had a problem I'd had before. The kind of resentment that generates creative solutions at unexpected moments. Bai Jing opened the door that evening and mentioned an uninvited guest was coming for dinner. She said it while already moving toward the kitchen, adding dishes without waiting for a response. Zhang Zuozong appeared from his study and informed me that an old rival would be joining us tonight. He said old rival, the way people say it about someone they've known long enough to find annoying in an affectionate way. Tang Anbang arrived with his wife Zhou Meia and his daughter Tang Jiao Jiao. I watched this information travel across Zhang Yueru's face. Tang family, daughter, my classmate, already at the door, already smiling at me with the specific smile of someone who arranged this. Didn't expect that, did you? Tang Jiao Jiao said. She stepped through the door with the confidence of someone who'd checked all the angles before walking in. Zhang Zuozong and Tang Anbang exchanged insults in the comfortable way of people who've been doing it for decades. Tang Anbang mocked Zuozong's teaching ability. Zuozong mentioned Tang Anbang's weight. The adults sat down. Dinner began. At some point during the soup course, something sharp closed around my thigh. I looked at Yueru. She was looking at the table with her eyes toward the far wall. At some point after that, another hand arrived from the opposite direction. I looked at Tang Jiao Jiao. She was asking Bai Jing about the cooking method for a particular dish with complete attention. Under the table, a conflict was in progress that the adults were entirely unaware of. I sat between 2 people, conducting something between warfare and negotiation at my expense, while Zuozong explained Cambrian's cultivation philosophy to Tang Anbang above the tablecloth. When Zhou Meia asked what the girls were whispering about, Tang Jiao Jiao said it was something about class that the adults wouldn't understand. My face was doing something I couldn't fully manage. I told Bai Jing I was going upstairs to cultivate. She said, of course, the dedication is admirable. I excused myself. I took a very cold shower and spent 30 minutes trying to remember what I'd been thinking about before dinner. Constitution hit 20 that night. Berserk unlocked at the threshold. I tested it alone. Blood vessels enlarged visibly, skin flushed, health and energy spiked by approximately 50%. What it also did was introduce a strong emotional current, anger, aggression, the urge to move and break things. Not uncontrollable, just present, like someone turned up the volume on every instinct. I sat with it for several minutes. The moon breathing technique, which I'd learned I was using without knowing it, helped more than I'd expected. Eventually, it calmed. Berserk was a nuclear option, useful for situations where being overwhelmed was worse than burning resources, not a daily tool. I filed it away. Zuozong started teaching me the morning after the dinner. Extreme fist first, 12 forms, each designed to break physical limits by burning vital energy. The technique pushes the body beyond its baseline at the cost of internal wear. He demonstrated the complete sequence once and asked if I had questions. I asked him to run through it again, continuously, without breaks. He did. Absolute focus activated. The world narrowed to his body. The weight transfer, the shoulder alignment, each form's mechanical relationship to the next. I watched the sequence 3 times before my hands moved, and when they moved, the system registered it. Extreme fist, not yet beginner, 0-100. I started grinding. The repetitions stacked quickly under focus. By the point the experience counter hit 100, my fascia had restructured. I could feel it, a deep ache in places that don't normally ache, muscles remapping their relationship to each other. I kept my face neutral and didn't mention it. Zuozong watched me hit beginner level and was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Could this kid be a martial saint reincarnated?" He said it under his breath. I pretended not to hear it. He proposed sparring. I charged in. This was a mistake, though I didn't realize it until he hit me under the armpit with a strike that communicated that the armpit has opinions about being hit. I backed up, Tried again. He found the right rib. I sat down for a moment to consider what I'd learned. From the second floor window, Zhang Zuozong, do you have any shame? That isn't sparring. If you're going to spar, lower yourself to his level. Bai Jing, arms crossed, the particular expression of a woman who's decided to intervene. Zuozong turned quickly. He mentioned that he hadn't realized she was watching. He said something about resilience training. She said, go make lunch, or let me teach you how to actually teach. He chose the former immediately. From the same window, Yueru, who had apparently been watching the whole thing, wrinkled her nose at me and whispered that I'd gotten lucky. Then, she pulled her head back inside when her mother looked up. I spent the rest of the day sparring at a more instructional pace and learning breaking army killing path in the afternoon. The sword technique moved faster than the fist. Absolute focus processed the killing arc geometry efficiently, and the system accepted it with a speed that Zuozong later called unprecedented for anyone short of a prodigy. I didn't correct him on the mechanism. That evening, Zuozong told me his arrangements. Zhu Lingwei, who he'd specifically recruited, would take me demon hunting regularly once I reached first rank, generating sustainable demon essence at scale. Gao Jian, the arena referee, had been brought in to train me for one-on-one ring competition. Both of them were preparation for the college competition next year, team events on Skull Island, and individual ring matches. He said he wasn't putting pressure on me. The year after would also be fine. I told him it wouldn't be necessary. Next year was the year. He smiled. The smile of a man who'd said the same thing to himself 30 years ago and still remembered exactly what it felt like. The next evening, Yueru didn't sit next to me at dinner. She was irritable in a way that didn't attach to any specific cause I could identify. Short answers, not looking at me. After dinner, I found her in her room and asked if she was all right. She said she had a few days every month when she was very irritable and it wasn't personal. I went downstairs. There was a recipe in the back of my mind from years ago, something I'd made for my sisters in the Lu family when they needed it, both of them, neither of whom had ever said thank you or noticed the effort. I found the ingredients in the kitchen, and Bai Jing watched me move around the kitchen with an expression that was very warm and also very amused. I made the nutritional tea and brought it upstairs. Yueru looked at the cup, then at me. Then she drank it. A few minutes passed. She said, the pain is better. I said good and went back to my room. Later, I heard her telling Bai Jing that she would be requiring this service on a monthly basis, and if I refused, there would be consequences. Bai Jing said something indulgent. Zuozong made a comment from somewhere I couldn't see. The house had its sounds. The next morning, the forum was different. My post from the previous challenge cycle had been deleted and replaced. The new posts claimed I'd called all sophomores trash, insulted their families, and announced I was better than every second year in the martial arts department. The language was specific and inflammatory in a way that felt designed rather than organic. I recognized the pattern, Lu Mingfei's handwriting, or whoever was managing the strategy from his end. Tang Jiao read the post at the next seat and was visibly angry. She said, this is a slander campaign and he should do something about it. I looked at the post for a moment. Then I wrote a new challenge. Every second year martial arts student, Monday, 1,000 yuan registration fee via the QR code. Added, if you're too cowardly, don't bark. Zhu Lingwei appeared over my shoulder and read the post on my screen. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, if I embarrassed her, don't expect mercy. She walked to the front of the class and announced that her students didn't start trouble, but never backed down from it. Anyone who bullied a member of this class would answer to her personally. The freshmen present during this speech developed a specific quality of collective confidence. Tang Jiao moved her stool approximately 6 centimeters closer to mine and maintained contact with my elbow for the remainder of the morning. In a park on the other side of campus, Lu Mingfei told Ziewen that the strategy was working exactly as planned. He said, this idiot is so easy to provoke. They had a substance called HT-383, 60,000 yuan from the black market, a military stimulant that could temporarily double a person's ki and blood levels within minutes. Oral administration, no injection required. The idea was to give it to Kei Xiongwen, a third-rank sophomore Ziwen knew, before his match. Kei Xiongwen would have no idea what he was drinking. He'd just become roughly comparable to a fourth-rank martial artist for a window of time. The plan assumed MC wouldn't be able to handle someone at that level. I didn't know about the HT-383. I was in the cultivation room that evening, running extreme fist drills. back to back, until my muscles had learned to stop arguing with the forms. In another city, Tang Anbang sat across from his wife with a projected screen between them. The investigation results. MC had been lost at 3, raised in an orphanage until 15, found and returned to the Lu family. The years in the Lu family had not been good years by any description. The Lu patriarch had subsequently been expelled from the Demon Hunter Guild for embezzlement, divorced with nothing. The family was in a rental apartment now, carrying a billion yuan debt that the eldest daughter was repaying from her company's earnings. Zhou Mae looked at MC's old photos, the thin boy, the oversized uniforms, and called the family despicable. Tang Anbang said, "The boy survived all of it and arrived at Cambrian as the strongest freshman. That's not a background to run from." He told his wife he approved. If their daughter was serious, it wasn't a conversation to dismiss. In the Lu family apartment, Lu Qinghan arrived late and exhausted and sat down at the kitchen table. She had 2 pieces of news. The gaming helmet prototype was complete. Full immersion VR, not visual simulation, but tactile, temperature, proprioceptive. The feedback from test users was that the experience was indistinguishable from reality. The commercial potential was essentially unlimited. She'd already had conversations with 3 conglomerates who wanted in. The second thing was about MC. She'd heard, from a source at Cambrian, through business channels she'd spent weeks carefully establishing, that he was class monitor, strongest freshman, well-liked, training seriously. She'd also heard his name connected to the dean's daughter. She'd established a subsidiary called Matrix Technology to operate the helmet product. She'd assigned MC 46% of the shares, enough to make him the largest single shareholder, without his knowledge. She was holding them in trust until the time was right. Lin Shuya listened to all of this and started crying somewhere in the middle of it. Not the uncontrolled crying of breakdown, the steady kind, the kind that happens when something you've been afraid to hope for turns out to be happening. She said, "Good, as long as he's doing well." Qing'an said, when the company launched and needed to establish academic partnerships, Cambrian would be the first approach. He couldn't refuse a shareholder meeting, and she'd be the one to make the introduction. She didn't say what she'd do in the room when she saw him. Neither of them addressed that part. At Shengwu Academy, Lu Jin was applying ointment to his ribs. 3rd loss this semester. 2 wins he'd barely managed against opponents a full grade below his level. The academy's system was simple. Fight or lose resources or fail. Fail twice and get expelled. The person who'd beaten him in the last match had the kind of power that made MC's version of that power seem like a baseline rather than a ceiling. He'd started hiding in his room. The access control system announced a visitor. He looked at the screen. The figure in the doorway was holding flowers and had the particular stillness of someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Lu Jin's face drained. He sat on the bed with the ointment still in his hand, staring at the screen. Downstairs, outside the door that he wasn't going to open, someone knocked. The sound of it echoed in a room that had recently contained a boy who had never been afraid of anything, discovering that the world outside the Lu family mansion operated by rules he hadn't prepared for. While I was finishing my bone tempering, Lu Jin was accepting a different kind of arrangement. She was called Xuanyuan Ting Ting, 1.9 meters tall, built like a combat specialist, from one of Dragon Kingdom's top 3 wealthy families, 3 martial saints in the bloodline. She decided she wanted Lu Jin, which in her vocabulary meant she decided she would have him. Lu Jin had 3 consecutive losses at Shengwu Academy. The ranking system there was simple: fight or lose resources, fall behind and get expelled. Without money from home, without the family name that had carried him through every room he'd ever entered, he was drowning in a school that treated unearned status as irrelevant. She offered cultivation resources worth 30 million yuan. She offered protection. He took it. He told himself it was temporary. He swallowed the rest of what he was feeling, buried it under calculation, and pointed the accumulated fury of his humiliation at the most available target, the name that had replaced his in every family story since the exam. He blamed me for it. That was fine. His blame couldn't reach me where I was. At 5 in the morning, I was in the training building with the Hymax strength tester. Data first. That was always the rule. Pure physical strength, 850 kilograms. Extreme fist at minor mastery. No QI blood, 1,272. With full QI and blood mobilization, 2,467, approaching 2.5 tons. I activated Berserk briefly, and the machine registered the peak before I cut the skill from the spike of vertigo and muscle demand that followed. It read 3,665 kilograms. I left without clearing the reading because Tian Ziming's voice came from upstairs asking what the noise was, and I had more pressing things than explaining a 5 a.m. training session to a stranger. He found the reading. He sent it to his captain. The school team apparently had a meeting about it. Tang Jiaojiao had organized 500 people. They were waiting outside the cafeteria when I came out after class. Flags that said the strongest freshman, borrowed bass drums, cheerleaders in 2 formations. She was at the front with a megaphone, and when I appeared, her expression was the specific expression of someone who has executed a plan and is watching it land exactly as intended. She asked, "Surprised? Unexpected?" I stood there for a moment. 500 people looking at me. People who'd come specifically because I was fighting tonight, because they'd watched the dorm video or heard the arena stories, or just believed the forum reputation and decided to show up anyway. I said, "I only have one goal, to conquer. Let's go." They cheered. We walked across campus. I will be honest about what that felt like. Not triumphant, exactly. Something quieter and more specific. A boy who spent years being invisible in a house full of people, walking across campus, surrounded by 500 voices that had come for him specifically. It fit somewhere I hadn't measured before. The arena had the school team in it, Han Zhuling, Tian Ziming, Chen Yingjun, and Fan Xiaohua, sitting in the second row with the particular focus of people conducting an evaluation. In the stands somewhere, Jie Wen and Lu Mingfei were positioned where they could watch without being watched. Yueru was at the cage edge with her medical kit. I took off my shirt before entering the ring. The outfit she'd bought me, I wasn't going to ruin it in a fight. I folded it and placed it outside the cage. She turned away and focused on something else, with the intensity of someone who had decided very deliberately where to look. I borrowed Tang Jiaojiao's megaphone. I told the sophomore class that I hoped they'd pressure me tonight, that I hoped they'd fight with everything, that it would be disappointing if they held back. The arena erupted. Zhou Yang entered first, broad, bald, the iron shirt technique activating the moment he settled into stance. His skin flushed red, muscles swelling visibly, the ki and blood gathering into an external armor that, at second rank application, could deflect strikes that would break ordinary bones. I hit him once. A straight punch, no ki, test. He stumbled back 2 steps. His chest had a visible mark from my knuckle. He called it a tickle. I decided to find out if that was true. Full kui blood mobilization. Extreme fist form 7, the shoulder drop that generates rotation torque through the entire kinetic chain. The impact landed with everything behind it. Gao Jian sprinted to catch Zhou Yang before he hit the cage wall. Iron shirt shattered. The technique requires a continuous kui blood investment to maintain. What Extreme Fist does is punch through the investment with enough force that the defense loses structural coherence. Zhou Yang needed the school hospital. His iron shirt training would need time to rebuild. Gao Jian turned to me. No more Extreme Fist. Cambrian students can't withstand that impact. I agreed. After the next challenger's name was called, silence. Then 5 more silences. The pattern established itself. Call a name. Wait, nothing. Zhukan refused the silence. He was 3rd rank, fast and unpredictable, kicks averaging 2 tons with feinting patterns that made targeting difficult. He taunted his way through the crowd and onto the stage. We fought. He was genuinely good. He hit me several times in the first minute, and I let him, because what I was doing wasn't fighting. It was data collection, force distribution, shoulder telegraphing, the relationship between his feints and his committed attacks. Each exchange generated information, absolute focus. Level 2, activated. The world slowed. I watched 3 complete cycles of his attack pattern in compressed time and found what I was looking for. His powerful kicks always had the right leg as the foundation. The left leg's flexibility was the visual deception, but the power came from the right. I stopped retreating and timed it. When he committed to his strongest kick, I swept the right leg before the transfer completed. He stumbled. I hit him in the abdomen with the momentum of everything I'd been building for 2 minutes. He folded. Yueru came into the cage with water and a towel. She wiped my face with the matter-of-fact efficiency of someone who has done this before, handed me the water, and then seemed to notice the proximity all at once and left quickly. The towel smelled like her shampoo. Tang Jiaojiao, from the floor below the cage, was watching this interaction with the expression of someone who has identified an opponent and is calculating. Chu Liang stepped up next, lean, cold, the kind of quiet that means 10 years of serious training. Mantis boxing, the index fingers hardened to the density of knives through years of conditioning solutions and grinding exercises. The style designed to strike acupoints with the precision of a needle finding a vein. I retreated for a while. The crowd started calling me Lu Pao Pao, Runaway Lu. The nickname was accurate. I was retreating because I needed to understand the style before I committed. Under absolute focus, I ran through his attack patterns and found the answer. This style had very few structural flaws. The technique was clean, so the flaw was the weapon itself. I stopped retreating. He charged. I hit his index finger with my right fist. My bones are immortal tempered. His fingers were hardened through a decade of practice. These are not equivalent things. His finger bent at a 45-degree angle from the joint. He screamed. Yueru examined him afterward and told him it was a dislocation, not a break. The medical department at Cambrian specialized in martial arts injuries. He would recover. 2 more third-rank opponents after Chu Liang. One went down from a combination to the ribs. The other, I finished with a right hook that terminated his involvement quickly. Then, Kei Xiongwen. He was the last challenger, 3rd rank, which I'd been defeating all afternoon. Quiet in a different way from Chu Liang. The quiet of someone who has made a decision they're not entirely comfortable with, but has decided to hold to it anyway. Before the match, he drank from a glass bottle. I didn't see this clearly from inside the cage. I found out what it was afterward. He hit me. The force was wrong. Not wrong like miscalibrated. Wrong like something had changed the fundamental parameters. The first punch hit my raised forearm and sent me back 3 full steps. The second landed on my chest before I'd fully recovered and put me against the cage. The arena erupted. His supporters were celebrating before I'd moved. I moved, got my breathing, assessed. His muscles were visibly swelling, clothes straining at the seams, veins in his forearms raised like cables, eyes bloodshot in a way that wasn't exertion. Something had been given to him. Gao Jian allowed extreme fist given the circumstances. In the stands, Zheng Zuozong had already ordered a blood test. I read the situation. Kei Xiongwen was aggressive, forward-moving, impatient, pursuing without tactical patience. Drug-enhanced fighters often have time windows. The substance doubles Kui blood, but the body wasn't built for that load, and the duration is finite. He was in a hurry because he had to be. I made him miss. For 3 minutes I moved and he chased, and every wasted attack burned through the stimulant's window faster than a controlled exchange would. His pattern lost precision. His planted foot overcommitted on a missed charge. I hit him with extreme fist directly to the cheek, 3 tons approximately. The calculation from the strength tester that morning. He went flying. He stood back up. Gao Jian's hand was at his earpiece. He was speaking quietly. He had a timeline in mind. In the stands, Xie Wen was watching something in Lu Mingfei's face. He'd noticed it building through the fight, the hatred, not the performative satisfaction of a rivalry going well, but something personal and consuming, something that had been there longer than this arena, longer than this semester. He'd pulled out his phone and let it record without pointing it, and then he'd asked Lu Mingfei, casually, "What's the real grudge here?" And Lu Mingfei, caught up in watching, distracted by the fight going differently than expected, had told him. Same surname. He hadn't noticed. Lu Sheng was his cousin. Xie Wen went still. He let the recording keep running and asked, why would a cousin want another cousin disabled? Lu Mingfei's answer was the coldest thing in the entire arena. MC's father had given the order. Lu Gentian, the man who'd adopted Lu Jin, who'd let his biological son be abused for 3 years, who'd destroyed MC's college future, who'd been stripped of his guild position and his marriage, had decided that the son who'd survived all of that was still a problem, a shameful bloodline, a loose end that needed to be addressed. Lu Mingfei was family. He was carrying out a family sentence. Xie Wen's phone kept recording. He thought about the drug. He thought about Kei Xiongwen, who had no idea he was serving as someone else's weapon. He thought about what would happen if this went wrong, if MC was crippled in his arena, if the top scorer from Beijing City was permanently damaged, if the investigation that Zhang Zuozong had already ordered traced the drug back through Kei Xiongwen to Xie Wen. He thought about his father, the dean of academic affairs, who would break Xie Wen's legs if he found out what had been done tonight. He stood up. In the cage, MC was still moving. The bruises had accumulated, red and purple across his shoulders, and ribs from 3 minutes of absorbing the kind of punishment a drugged third-rank fighter could deliver. His breathing was controlled, but the hits had registered. His body was tracking them, even if he wasn't stopping because of them. Yueru's hands were clasped together in her lap, so hard her knuckles had gone white. Tang Jiaojiao was still chanting through a voice that had nothing left in it. Gao Jian looked at his watch. Kei Xiongwen charged again. MC moved. The fight continued in the language of 2 people who were both, for different reasons, unable to stop. Somewhere outside the cage, Xie Wen was running. He had a recording of a man confessing that his cousin's father had ordered his cousin disabled. He had the name of the drug, the name of the supplier, the name of the person who'd given it to Kei Xiongwen, with false promises about his parents' employment. He didn't know if he was doing this because it was right or because he was afraid. He ran. The arena hummed with sound. The crowd that had come to watch the strongest freshman fall, discovering that he hadn't, that he was still standing, still moving, still absorbing and countering with the particular singular persistence of someone who has spent his entire life proving that the things that were supposed to break him hadn't. The match hadn't been stopped. MC didn't know what Z1 was carrying. MC didn't know what Lu Mingfei had said. MC didn't know that in the stands, the last piece of the Lu family's reach had just been turned by someone who had started as an enemy. He was in the cage, fighting. That was where the story cut to black. 3 things unresolved: the match, the recording, and somewhere in the fabric of what came next. Whether MC would ever learn that the order to destroy him had come from his own father's name, the audience would have to come back for the answer.